OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Good morning to you. Yes, I start talking now.
Yeah,
thanks, Colm. Good morning to you. It's Friday. It's OTB AM. It is Adrian here. It's Colm over there, and it's Shane over there. Morning to you, folks.
Good morning. Action, Adrian. Action.
And we're ready to go. We were just having a 20-minute production conversation as to when exactly was the right moment to start now with the new order. Anyway, people don't care about that. Good morning to you, wherever it is you're at this morning, and good morning to you, lads. How's the form?
Flying it. Absolutely flying it.
I said to myself before we came on air, I'm not going to mention the jumper. But Colm, it's
oh, this is a Hannon special at this stage.
It's very woolly and warm.
I'd like one Hannon special, please, and that's what comes.
Adrian, I think you're just jealous of it.
I don't like. I'm not exactly a fashionista, and I don't really like having to go at you about your clothes, but it's just not good.
What? Someone who isn't a fashionista would not show up in that jumper, Adrian. Come on, give yourself some credit.
It's a smart jumper.
Give yourself
some credit. Your own lovely jumper. It's quite similar style.
This is lovely.
It's like the same jumper.
You could be in a couple suit bed.
You're a baby. Adrian might be a baby boomer. You see, he doesn't get the fashion. He just doesn't.
He doesn't get
with the kids.
You wearing that saying that I don't get fashion is certainly something that needs to be tipped up.
Please, someone back me up. I've had a tough week. I've had a tough week of being.
Yeah, you have, and I'm very proud of you this week because you stuck to your guns when everyone was against you. You stuck to your guns and you kept going with this ridiculous comparison. Fair play.
I'm very proud of you. You do ridiculous. I'm feeling I've had a tough week myself. I started Zwifting.
What the hell is that?
Oh, yeah. I saw you calling it. It's like, if anyone fancies a ride.
Earlier this week I started Zwifting.
What is Zwifting? Z?
Yes, Zwifting, yeah. It was the COVID craze where people couldn't leave the house, and so everybody got a turbo bike into their house and started turbo biking.
Oh, the indoor stationary bike.
You take the back wheel off your bike and you stick it up on top of the Zwift and away you go.
You're one of them now. Lycra. Do you wear the Lycra in the house?
No, I haven't got around to that just yet, but I'm sure it's probably only a matter of time. It's very handy, I must say. Like, it's sort of...
Yeah, it actually stays there. Well, you can be cycling as fast as you can, but the bike actually doesn't move. Which is pretty handy.
Are you taking the piss now, or is that what's happening? What's going on there? No, it is very handy. I find it at my stage of life with 3 small kids at home and like not a great ability to. When I want to be able to exercise, I don't have to have a huge big rigmarole of organising stuff. This is not. It sounds like an ad or that I've been paid for this, and I've not. But it's although all freebies are welcome. Having said that, it's very handy because there's no rigmarole. I don't need to get involved with all your Lycra stuff. I can just
the fresh air though, Adrian. You're missing out.
I can open the window beside me and get all that. The minute you get all the fresh air you need.
The wind in your face.
I don't know, during the summer, I do think maybe during the summer that might get a bit more. And when I put her up online, had somebody coming back to me because the interface is so cool. So you have yourself in the middll of a race, and of course I did the classic I'm going to say Irish thing, certainly me thing, where I was like, I'm just going to go out now and have an easy sort of 15-20 minute, because I hadn't done before, so I'll have a bit of a go at this, sort of ease myself into it. And so I entered into it. You can enter into races, so it comes up and it says
you have a screen in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. You can mirror onto your TV.
Okay.
And it says this race is starting in 5 minutes, you should if you want to jump on this one over. So I did that. Didn't know some of the category I was getting into. And then even though I haven't really done much exercise in about 10 years, I found myself a few minutes into this thing going flat out to catch somebody called H. Barnes, who was a minute ahead of me. It might have been Harvey Barnes.
Harvey Barnes,
for sure.
I reeled him in.
That's pretty good.
It was 5 laps it took, and I reeled him in, and I was like flat to the mat, like this is so stupid, like flat to the mat going after this guy to reel him in. I got past him, and the second I got past him I just lost all motivation and enthusiasm. I was like, all right, Harvey, you go now, you go, take this thing to the line.
So are you racing other human beings?
Yeah. You could jump on. If I had any friends, I could jump on with friends, and
if I had any friends,
I could jump on with friends and race with them.
The last time I saw you engage in any sporting activity was circa January 2020, when there was an indoor football match between Off the Ball Heads with Brian Kerr's managers and John Giles manager of the other.
Was before that.
I think it was then. Actually, you might be right. About 2019 maybe. And anyway, it was live streamed, so everybody could enjoy this. People might remember it. And there was one point I was watching, and this guy picks up the ball at left back, very much right-footed, whoever this was, right? And he was turning back inside. And then he does a Cruyff turn to skin. I think it was... Who was that? Nathan Murphy got skinned.
Yeah.
And then he, unfortunately for this gentleman beside me here, to my left, he passed what I would describe as a hospital pass into midfield.
And
then ruined your Cruyff turn. Do you want to discuss that?
No, all of that is accurate up to the last bit where I played a lovely deaf ball into the middle of the park. And one of my colleagues was running onto it and made an absolute hames of it and let them move down.
It was outside of your right foot. You weren't looking.
Things, you know these highlight reels that they show of class moves and class players,
and they stop it before the moment. Yeah.
That's what they.
It's like in Soccer AM on the showboat. It was like, what did he do afterwards? They never showed. Now tell me this: are you a skillful footballer? Don't be shy.
No, not really. No.
I know by the eyes. People can't actually see the truth.
No. I wouldn't be.
It's a telepathic answer you gave me there.
I can't remember who did Brian Kerr and John Giles name as man of the match in that game again. It wasn't.
It wasn't me.
Straight onto my CV that went.
No.
Straight onto the LinkedIn profile that evening.
Anyway,
was it like the monorail episode? Or it was clearly it's you.
Yeah.
In The Simpsons, and it was like, was that why you were man of the match, or did they actually really think that you were the best player?
I had a good game. Yeah, a decent game.
That's good.
Yeah.
Shane shoehorning himself. He doesn't want to
be. Deft touches, as you would say.
And to be fair, you are a good footballer, so that's.
Thank you, Adrian.
Right, I wanted to mention that at the start. I'm sort of hobbling around a bit.
It's Friday the 13th as well, so.
That's true.
All touch wood, all goes well.
Chelsea last night, and the ever unfortunate Graham Potter. He just can't catch a break, the guy, or a win. And he was at 6 points from the last 9 Premier League games, something along those lines. Not great, to say the least. And the whole João Felix stuff. Colm was texting the group last night saying, João Felix, this guy's unbelievable. Chelsea are going to win the Premier League. And then about 5 minutes later, live score pops up.
His second red card ever. Second only. Got one for Atletico as well. Phil was telling me this morning. Such a shame for him, but hilarious for everybody else. Because now he's going to miss 3 games. It will find him, a nice little time to settle in London now. Find a gaff.
True.
You'll see a few bars. Nice little time off for himself. But for 58 minutes, I thought he was like by far the best player on the pitch. It was as if they planked a world-class player into a team full of handy enough players, but not great. Even within the first 2 minutes, lovely nutmeg on the right-hand side of the penalty area, lovely pass into the box. And then there was a moment in the start of the second half, I'd say literally minutes before he got sent off. And inexplicably, BT Sport didn't show a replay at any point of it, but it was so beautiful. He had his back to goal. It was a kind of daisy-cutter pass to him, so difficult to control. And just one touch, flick between the legs to Meggs, his marker, and kept him going with the ball. Just like a class above. Had that like lovely style where brilliantly skillful players have of kind of floating rather than running, and you just can't catch the guy. And he kept them winning free kicks in the middle of the pitch.
He's very foulable. But he's confidence personified. Like as soon as he gets the ball, you're like, this guy. He knows what he's about.
If he never plays for Chelsea again, I would deem him as a success based off
Greatest Chelsea player of all time.
That one game. But look, it was literally this time last week exactly that Shane, you, me, and Ger were talking about Graham Potter, and they had just lost narrowly 1-0 at home to Manchester City in the Thursday night Premier League game, the Riyad Mahrez goal. But City were well warranted their victory, and we were saying.
Sorry, go on.
I thought they were much better in the second half. I thought they were much better.
Unfair.
That's fair enough, but I thought they were much better.
Since then, they've lost 4-0 to City in the cup.
And we were talking about, and we were like, no, he'll step. There's something in me that I don't think he's going to be manager next season.
But is it?
Can't see it.
And I do think your synopsis of that City Chelsea game is very unfair. I actually thought Chelsea could have won that game.
I thought City were much better in the second half.
But they could easily have won the game.
I thought they were much better in the second half. But I do agree with your point that Chelsea aren't actually playing too badly at times, because against Fulham last night they were good for large chunks of the game. But obviously people see the result. Like, this is a complete disaster for Potter.
And so obviously the conversation started about whether the conversations continue about whether Graham Potter should be in charge or not. And like, look at it, I don't know. There is a point where obviously it may reflect very badly on the entire club if they end up getting rid of him, and maybe they got rid, as one of our YouTube commenters said this morning, maybe they got rid of the previous guy, Ian. Awful stuff for Chelsea. Tuchel was moved on too fast. Maybe they got rid of the previous guy a bit too quickly as well. But like, I'd seen there was Henry Winter, one of the reporters, writing about it this morning, saying that Graham Potter may be out of his depth, but surely that's not relevant against a team like Fulham, who he would have. I say a team like Fulham, they're 6th in the Premier League, they're actually ahead of Chelsea, they're absolutely fine. It's maybe a bad example, but like that's not him surely at that point being out of his depth. And also with the game last night, like a raft of individual errors. I know that you could that's not always not you can't always say that that's not partly to do with the manager as well, but it does feel as if it's...
Well, with the Fulham example, I actually don't think it's to do with the opposition. I think it's Potter in his own head about being Chelsea manager. And again, to reference Phil Egan this morning, he was kind of saying the thing with him is, and Cameron was saying the same, is like, Potter isn't carrying himself as a Chelsea manager.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, there is definitely a vibe, this kind of intangible feeling that like, I can't believe I'm Chelsea manager. And like the other thing, like, and we said it a few times, Shane, about last season, Potter at Brighton, he got booed after a home game around this time last year.
The fans are very understanding. I mean?
Like, and it was only like the first 6 weeks of this season that he had that incredible spell. And he is a really good manager. And I hope it works out for Potter, because he seemed like, I like his path, like, you know, coaching in Sweden and have like, and a real thinker, and like he has other elements other than football to his life, and he has a degree as well, like in psychology, I think he's big on. Like, so I'm really fascinated by the guy. I hope it works out for him. I can't see it. I just can't see him being manager really any even medium term at Chelsea.
Do you remember, like, he went over and clapped the Chelsea fans at full time, and the Chelsea fans appeared to be quite amenable at full time, considering the result and the dire form. I actually thought they were reasonably respectful. Of course, there's a cohort of fans that won't be. He kind of looks like, do you remember the guy went into the BBC studios by accident and he ended up in an interview that he shouldn't have been on, and he tried to play it off and do the interview? There's an element of that off Potter at the minute, where he's like,
and he shouldn't
how
be
am
like
I
that.
here?
He shouldn't be like that, because he's much better than that. He's much better than he's carrying himself.
For
I would
sure.
say.
But listen, you can be certain that Potter last night after the game, and he's never going to say it publicly, of course, but he's looking at that going, like, what's my keeper? My keeper's let me down here.
Kepa,
you know,
Kepa for that winning goal.
Azpilicueta.
What are you up to?
You know, like
I did the same last week against Maris.
So there's, like, you know, I think, I'm not sure that Potter is in any bit of him is the guy from the BBC. I'm sure that he's fully believing that he's the right person. He has to believe that he's the right person.
I think he's landed in this job too early.
And he's also, what he's doing now is looking at the keeper and looking maybe Azpilicueta, who's about 68, I think, at this stage, and thinking, well, maybe there's a bit of a reshuffle needed here.
Yeah, but look at the list. Like, I have the list of injuries in front of me here, like Wesley Fofana, Ben Chilwell, Reece James, N'Golo Kante, Armanda Broja, who's out for the season, Christian Pulisic, Edouard Mendy, that's why Kepa's playing, Raheem Sterling and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, they're all injured. Now, it also goes to say that Chelsea have about 4 million players.
Yeah.
Because they still have good players on the bench
But
last night.
is that list not enough to give the man a break?
Well, there's one element to it, but I really don't think there's any sympathy out there at all when big teams have a lot of injuries.
And then he's got
nobody cares. Like, nobody gives.
He's got Aubameyang then sitting on the bench, and yes, last night you would think in a normal situation is the perfect opportunity to bring him on. Doesn't bring him on because he's not good enough. And I think the BT panelists last night were saying Kai Havertz now is going to be the number 9 with like the way things are going with Felix, and like. It's a shit show. He's been given that. You know, that was a Tuchel's, or it wasn't a Graham Potter signing Aubameyang.
There was an episode of Dream Team 20 years ago where Carl Fletcher was brought on, star striker, and taken off. And that was the end of Carl Fletcher's first stint at Harchester United. And for Aubameyang to be brought on after 5 minutes last Thursday night for the injured Raheem Sterling, and to be brought off after 67, there's no coming back for Pierre.
Okay. Bobby Dwyer, good morning to you. Enough on mid-table Chelsea. It's Derby weekend, the simultaneous feeling of nerves and excitement. Surely Martin Lipton should be on today. We might touch on that a little bit later on. Greg Gansey says Turlock Clerkin.
Thank you.
The surname, I think, gives it away.
I appreciate it.
Monaghan name.
Well, probably related to
I know
Fergus
Turlock. I actually know
says very
Turlock.
little need to mention the jumper. We can all see it.
Thank you.
That's fair enough. There are people
see it from space potentially
that are just listening to us.
Just on that point of Bobby Dwyer saying move on to the big game this weekend. Often, and look, there's probably Fulham fans tuning in this morning. We're all guilty of doing this. Do you know when a team, say United win a match or Liverpool win a match, their followers often listen to the post-match podcasts from all the podcast groups. That you don't really want to listen to a podcast where your team has lost, so the numbers skyrocket. We have to give some credit to Fulham. We're guilty of doing this all the time. Like fourth straight league, like they're up to 6th. Tim Ream was great in the interview afterwards last night. He was very honest. Gave his jersey away to a little fan in the crowd as well. Fulham deserve credit.
They do, but
and like we were so guilty of honing in on that. Like there's probably loads of Irish Fulham fans that are like waiting for that little moment of praise. Fulham beat Chelsea 2-1.
Let's hear from you.
Yeah. If you're a Fulham fan and you're Irish, let us know in the comments.
No, that's true. But if we talked about Fulham solely today, like the comments
of
coming
course.
about Potter, you know,
no, just a word to them.
But they're very good. But also that happens so much now in the last decade. Is like you always have when a smaller team beats a bigger side, and it's like, oh, we should give credit to the smaller team, and everyone's in agreement, and then everybody moves back onto the big team. So it's like almost that line itself is justifying it.
Yeah.
Dropping on Netflix this morning at some point. Today, Shane, will be brand new tennis, behind the scenes tennis documentary, docu-series, fly on the wall thing called Breakpoint. I get that. I'm always getting
the reverse of a great film called Point Break.
Of course, yeah.
By Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, which is fantastic.
Breakpoint.
I like
this
both
is
words.
Made by the people who made Drive to Survive and are also making the new upcoming golf documentary.
Yeah.
Docu-series.
Six Nations as well.
Now they're doing a Six Nations one, interesting enough. But this is, I mean, of all the things that to be in the wheelhouse of yourself, this is dream team stuff for you.
Yeah.
You've watched, you've seen.
Yeah,
the
you and I had the luxury, the very good fortune of getting advanced
what do you make of it? Tell there's a lot of tennis fans waiting.
So there's 5 episodes out now as we speak on Netflix this side of the world, and there's 5 more coming in June. First episode concentrates solely on Nick Kyrgios at the Australian Open this time last year. And for those who remember, he got knocked out early in the singles and basically was like, I don't know if I'm going to play tennis again, and then went on to win the doubles with his best buddy Thanasi Kokkinakis. And it follows him basically in his mental health journey. And then the following 4 episodes, there are actually 2 players each per episode. So Kyrgios gets his own special treatment in the first episode. So Adrian and myself were asking the producers about that yesterday. Why was that the case? And that interview is going to come up at 9:30 today. We're going to play
basically
out with
Netflix said. Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
Netflix
well,
said,
I mean, look, the thing is, like, it's very, a very brief synopsis of the whole thing. It's very interesting to see how lonely these players are. Like, it's a brutal sport for the vast majority of them, and they all acknowledge that. The one disappointment is, like, by my count, Kyrgios is just about the 7th most famous tennis player in the world, and in this series, he's the most famous because there's no Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, Serena, Andy Murray or Naomi Osaka. They're all absent. Now, Nadal is in the documentary, the first 5 episodes, but very much cast as the silent antagonist. This is kind of the guy we have to beat, and he's always there in the distance on the other side of the net. So if you knew absolutely nothing about tennis or coming to this for the first time, this sport, you'd be like, oh, this guy seems to be very good, this Nadal guy, but we don't know anything about him. So I would say, like, Adrian, like, who's the documentary for? It's probably for people who have a slight interest in tennis and kind of want to know more about it, or people who just kind of like a dramatic narrative.
It's not for you.
Lives.
This is Colm's way of saying, you know, I'm above.
No.
Well, how many episodes have you two watched?
Talked about this.
Like tennis, what?
How many episodes have you both seen?
I've seen 1.5.
I've seen the first 4.
Okay, so you've already interviewed the producers, so you can now be honest. What
we were saying that.
Is it worth watching?
It's different.
I would say it is.
And like I'm probably that person that you're talking about in that, like, I'm fairly easy breezy about tennis, whereas you're obviously much deeper into it. It's the difficulty, and we were saying this yesterday. The difficulty for them is that they've made Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just such a brilliant series that
it's hard to compete with it.
It's very hard, and we'll see what happens with these other ones. That's one side of it. Then on another side, you have. They're sitting with these players who now suddenly sort of realise that this is what's going to happen. Like, you're going to ask me awkward questions at awkward times, and so they don't. There's no teething almost in that regard. It's not as good as Drive to Survive.
No, but Drive to Survive, I'm right in saying, had the biggest hitters and the biggest players,
Sure.
basically.
No, they've kind of dropped off. Verstappen doesn't do it anymore because of they feel like they stitch some pieces together and make interviews look and sound different to how they actually went.
But even the fact he was in it and then stepped back his news.
At least he was there, and Hamilton has been in it. I think the Drive to Survive have been criticised for maybe over dramatising some of the races and battles and kind of not falsifying, but inventing little I guess images to make races look more dramatic. Like, is it similar?
There's 2 examples of it. I would say that the tournaments that they're focusing on, I would argue, aren't that big a deal, and they're making out to be massive. Right. But I understand why they did, because it's the best way to follow that individual player's journey.
Yeah,
so, like,
fair.
Maria Sakkari, the Greek player, features heavily in this, and she's a fascinating character to follow. And I'd say the most interesting scene so far in the first 4 episodes. In the second episode, Alia Tomljanovic, the Australian player, and Matteo Berrettini, the Italian, they were actually a couple at the time a year ago. They were going out. They subsequently broke up, and Tomljanovic ended up having the best season she's ever had. She went deep into the latter season Grand Slams. But there's a scene in the hotel room where they're arguing basically, and they don't care that the cameras are there. And it's just fascinating because Tomljanovic is eliminated very early from the Australian Open, whereas Berrettini goes all the way very, very deep. But Tomljanovic stays to support her partner, and the tension between, like, their sleeping patterns and, like, who's going to sleep where. And they're so ruthless, and so they have to be selfish, and Berrettini's like, I need my sleep, like, don't go near me. And she's understanding of that, and it's like, wow, like this goes to show their obsession, and they all feel so inferior to the big three and to Serena. That's so palpable. They're still they're like, these people are kind of superhuman. How are we ever going to compete with them? And I always thought tennis, there's a glamorous nature to it. You're traveling all around the world. It's fantastic. You're playing in lovely weather all the time. But like, it's so brutal. Like, it's just such a brutal sport, and that's what it shows.
What's the money like at the slams for progressing even to the quarters, semis, that sort of thing?
I think you get about 6 figures,
right?
Early 6 figures. Yeah. But if you look at, like we were saying there, Shane, the other day in the office, like Naomi Osaka, her earnings for last year, she earned I think 42 million, and 900,000 of that came from tennis. It's crazy. Like, so it was all.
Kyrgios is obviously somebody who is. Did he say he plays 10, 11 weeks of the year?
Yeah, he's part-time, completely part-time.
And how much did he make a year now?
So if you do the math on that, he gets to about the third or fourth round regularly. So that's about 100 or 200k a tournament, depending on a tournament. He only plays the bigger ones.
He's course.
So then he's earning. I'd say he earns about $1 million and a half for a tournament.
It shouldn't be a lot given the lifestyle, and he doesn't have very many coaches, I suppose. And stuff.
He's no coaches at all. He's nobody. He is. That's why he's a ridiculous.
Does he have
person.
any endorsements given his?
Yeah, he has
Nike's
sponsor.
He uses Cameo, doesn't he, Colm?
He uses Cameo. He gets a bit of bob off that.
Cameo, Colm.
Speaks nothing to Adrian, but yeah.
You know what Cameo is, Adrian? You know what Cameo is?
Do I know what Cameo is?
Yeah. you could get involved in Cameo. Cameo is where it's a website and you pay a certain amount of money to a celebrity to record a personalised video for you. Colm has one from Nick Kyrgios from a few years ago.
That's right.
Jay from the In-Betweeners apparently makes a fortune off that. So he has a bit of that, but like, he has a gaff in the Bahamas, Kyrgios, and like, he goes home to Canberra, he's house there, so he more than makes enough money for himself, but like, he still needs to maintain it. But his obsession with the game actually betrays the fact that like, this guy is the least professional person you're ever going to see in your life.
It'll be interesting to see with the rugby one, which is they come up Drive to Survive, Breakpoint. They've got all these sort of Full Swing, I think, is the golf one.
Yes.
There's the rugby one for the Six Nations is a planning working title, Six Nations. But
that's because they're comfortable that people will be interested.
Well, we'll see. I'm interested in it just in the context of the World Cup, and are people going to be as giving as they might normally be outside of a World Cup here? Because you don't be giving any other team. It'll be interesting to see, and we will come back and chat about that again.
So it starts on Monday anyway, the Australian Open.
Great. We'll come back and chat about that.
It's a day, Travis. It's a big sport.
8 minutes to 8. Just as his microphone fades out. It's a big sport. It's
just Manchester United.
I love tennis.
This is a big tournament.
8 minutes to 8 Friday morning. Good morning to you, wherever it is you're at this morning. OTBAM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up on the show for you over the course of the morning between now and 10. We're going to have Ronan O'Gara and Alan Quinlan both standing by, going to join us in a couple of moments' time. Louise Quinn, Republic of Ireland defender. It's the WSL is back, and the Women's Championship as well, where she currently plies her trade, so we get her thoughts on that and a few movements around the Irish football scene as well. Tim Stillman is a football writer on all things Arsenal, and a very interesting weekend, obviously had a North London derby, so we shall talk to Tim about that and a few more bits and pieces as well. Let you know what's happening across the newspapers this morning. Actor and broadcaster Simon Delaney will join us. Manchester United Uber fan will join us at 9:10 as well to discuss the Liverpool game this weekend, and I'm sure a few more bits as well. Rio Ferdinand this morning saying that the jury is still out on Eric Ten Hag. We might get Simon's thoughts on that. And as we've just been discussing, Breakpoint, the brand new Netflix documentary which tracks the game of tennis, is now live, and the couple of producers from that are going to join us at 9:30 this morning, myself and Colm. So that is where we're at, and as I said, we're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is 7:53, it's Friday morning, and we're going to welcome Ronan O'Gara to the show. Ronan, good morning to you.
Adrian, how are you?
How are you keeping?
Very well, you?
Good. Are you watching any of these fly on the wall documentaries?
No, I haven't. It was interesting. I only came on 2 minutes ago, but I missed it really. What were you discussing?
Breakpoint, it's a new Netflix documentary. It's like I don't know if you've seen Drive to Survive, the Formula 1 version.
No.
Very good.
Obviously, it's been the Six Nations have signed up with Netflix now, and they're doing a documentary of the 2023 Six Nations. That's the idea, is it?
Yeah. Did somebody say you had a French crew with you last year? I'm going to take that as internal. Okay.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there was a documentary, all right, on on our season. But it was impressive for an in-house job, very impressive.
And was it? How was it for you? Like, are you kind of mind your P's and Q's around it, or?
No, because I suppose Dave Berry. I remember Dave Berry did a documentary when I was playing. It was kind of followed for about 2 years, and it was an interesting, really interesting period, because it got to the stage where you had no idea that you were a piece to camera. And actually looking back on it, your capacity to recall events straight away within that kind of 10-minute window post-game to a Monday morning. Well, can you talk me through your feelings on Saturday night? Our poles apart. And there was some interesting takes on what had to be taken out, because did I say that? Did I say that? When you're in that emotional range and post-game, it strips you of all your not decency, but of your capacity, I suppose, to filter.
I remember talking to you after a lot of games, and it always struck me and it wouldn't have been in the immediate aftermath, but I remember even after there was a Wales game in Cardiff after we'd been beaten, you were always like hugely analytical and passionate and giving, in a way that it never felt as if you were sort of, look, maybe you were as well, but it never really felt like you were sort of holding much back. But are you saying that wasn't so much you showing your true personality as the adrenaline still been up?
I think sometimes you underestimate too of how much you go into that zone. I think preparing for a game, probably especially as a game manager, of a strategist, of I suppose your mindset of moving the team around the pitch in terms of how you can exploit weaknesses in the opposition. A lot of that is probably my responsibility when I played. It would be how you view it as a coach, but also I think when I was a player, it was great to watch other coaches potentially play with the media or try to string them along, in the fact where I think people are intelligent and it's very, very difficult to manipulate the media. My approach was that it's far easier, to be honest, than to have to cover your words or track back to what you potentially said, because as you can find out nowadays, there's some brilliant things on Twitter which you can watch. For example, in the Ronaldo situation, where it's all about achievement and it's all about
ego,
values. Yes. Fast forward, and I think it's whatever was it, 200 million a year he signed for? Is it?
Yeah, 200 million. I think me and Ronan are waiting for the fly on the wall darts documentary.
I think that you might be
off the bull, maybe.
Now, speaking of things that you may or may not remember, stuff that you said, and we'll bring Alan Quinlan here. Good morning to you, Quinny. And at the same time, I have a clip here, Ronan. It's 57 seconds long. It's Brian O'Driscoll in conversation with Nathan last night, so hopefully you can hear this loud and clear.
Rog was on to me in 06 before they won Europe, going, do you want to come down here? And I was like, what?
Sorry, what now? Sorry. Talk about this a bit more.
Did I never say this? No, Rog was on, kind of tentatively. He'll say, I was never properly asking, but he was definitely hedging his bets a small bit and inquiring as to whether I might have had any interest at all. It was when we were a bit of a basket case back in 05, 06. 4 coaches in 4 years. Cheka came in. The squad that he inherited was all over the shop. And did he just ring you up, or was this a conversation in Ireland camp? No, it was a conversation in camp, and he kind of threw it out there. It wasn't a formal, I've got a contract here ready for you to sign, but it was like, would you think about coming down? He definitely was asked to inquire as to whether,
right.
Well, what is your response? As guilty as charged, or no?
I don't remember the specific conversation, but over a period of playing with Brian all my career, I would say that was most definitely the case. I think Leinster are very different now to where they were at that stage. It's interesting maybe that was probably before we had won Europe, but we'd be knocking on the door and we were probably by far the dominant team. But I suppose in my head it was kind of, well, does Brian see himself winning something with Leinster? Does he want to come down to Munster and try and win something? And obviously we had, I think, Trevor Halstead, John Kelly, we had Laifimi, and we had Rua Tapoki, but Brian O'Driscoll would have been in addition to whatever team we'd play in. So I think that's a pretty normal probably thought process for someone that I was probably close with in the Irish team. And I think as Nathan kind of in the clip that you haven't played, the before and after of that, is that I think he could have gone down very well with the supporters in Munster, but it wasn't to be, and I can understand completely. But I don't I suppose find it too abnormal a conversation at all. An ambitious player where I think he could offer something to your team. Be sure I checked him out. Yeah,
I suppose if it was the other way around, Ronan, and say hypothetically Munster were struggling at that point, then you probably would have entertained and understood why someone like Brian would maybe come to you and try and bring you the other direction. I guess it's a natural enough conversation to have in an international camp. These chats do happen.
Yeah, exactly. A lot more so than you would think. And I think among competitors, it's exactly people ask, why does the Lions work? The Lions work because it's the best players pitched together in a very short period of time who are ultimately competitors who want to challenge themselves at the highest possible level. So this thing about how do you get on with the Welsh and the Scottish and the English, you get on with them after eating dinner and you decide you want to have a go off something. It's very natural in sports people to be able to do that. People struggle sometimes with that. I think, thankfully for me, I never had that decision because I suppose the group that was established at Munster by, the guys who came before me, the values and the traditions and the, I suppose the standards were established. So it was an easy enough group to go into, and then we just tried to add to that. While in Leinster's case, that wasn't the scenario. They had a lot of talented players that were hugely underachieving, that maybe hadn't established their values, but they obviously rectified that and kicked on to a new level. But for Brian, probably in a team performance in his own standards, there was definitely periods where they were underachieving.
Gary Neville had talked about something fairly similar a couple of years ago. He'd said that he'd gone to Stephen Gerrard during an England camp and said, here, would you ever think about it? It sounds like the conversation was sort of similar enough in the sense that Stevie G was like, no, listen, I'm red to the core, and Liverpool red to the core, and it's not happening. Do you... So, sorry, the point being that I think you're absolutely right. I think Nathan's reaction was all of our reaction when we first heard it. We were like, what? Whoa, because it would have been monster news, but not an unusual conversation to have. Do you remember it, or are you kind of like, there might have been something?
No, I don't remember if it was I would say it was probably, if it was probably me, I would say it would have been, I don't think it would have been a one-off. I'd say it was probably consistent probing there.
And it wouldn't have been you directed by someone at Munster to have that conversation?
No, I'd say that's where it'd be different. I think, I think in the situation Munster was a very honest environment, and it was hugely driven by players at that stage. I think I probably would have been an idea that I would have had in my head, but maybe there was something deeper behind it from a CEO or a general manager point of view, but it would have suited everyone, I suppose, for me to do that initial conversation.
I think if you were coming back up the road saying, listen, I've been chatting to him and he's interested, I think there might have been you might have been pushing doors easy enough. Were you yourself did anybody ever approach you like that? Because obviously both yourself and Quinny one club players, but were you ever approached?
Yeah, of course I was, yeah.
And in that kind of a casual way, sorry, I mean more than...
No, in casual and official ways, but you'd have to be off your rocker to leave Munster. As I said, I played in 10 European Cup semi-finals. Yeah, we lacked the quality at times to win it, but there's some massive satisfaction in being able to sleep at night preparing yourself that you're in the last four of Europe every year. And that's everything we stood for, I think. High standards, getting the best out of each other, driving each other. Do I look back and go, wow, we should have had 6 medals? Yeah, I do, but you move on very quickly with a more grateful attitude that we were thereabouts when it came to silverware, but lacked a little bit with the benefit of experience or hindsight. You'd love to change, but
were you ever no worries, Ron. Were you ever tapped up yourself, Quinny, in training or international camps or otherwise
or done any tapping up?
Oh yeah, vice versa either. Yeah.
I was doing the tapping up rather than being tapped up. I had a few opportunities to go to to go overseas at different stages, and as Rog was saying, look, we were very lucky. It was a team that we were knocking on the door every year for a number of years. So unless it was completely down to money, if you wanted to win things or be competing for trophies, it was a very hard team to leave. Even some guys left for a couple of years and came back, and that draw was always there. So we were very lucky in that sense. But I was always trying to, at times, look to push the recruitment and get better players in. It kind of backfired on me in 2003, 2004, when I was pushing to get Jim Williams in, but he came in then and took my place in the team for a period of time. So, it can backfire on you when you're looking to bring in players. You can be rest assured Roger was pushing no out halves to come in.
Yeah, if Brian was number 10, I don't think that would have happened.
And you know where all that started? The 2001 Lions tour.
Really?
We had a brilliant last gasp victory against the Brumbies in Canberra, and who was back row for the Brumbies? Big Jim Williams. And all of a sudden he ended up playing in Munster. You don't have to scratch your head too hard there. What did they say about your best friends?
Yeah, Jesus. Quinny's life flashed before his eyes as he saw that performance.
30 points to 7, Ronan. Toulouse last weekend. A long time trying. Must have been sweet.
You always have to get the dig in first.
I'm not. It's a compliment. It's a compliment.
I hope you had your La Rochelle jersey on.
I have the flag. Yeah, I have the flag at home. The kids have it out all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was much needed. Mind you, it was a lot of injuries in La Rochelle's team and triple injuries in the Toulouse team. So probably from a full, I suppose, dream list, it was 6 or 7 we were down. They were probably down 12 or 13. So read what you want into it.
Yeah.
But very important for progression that we, no matter how you look at it, I think it was 9 defeats in a row. It's a big statistic in modern rugby. So that's buried, thankfully. So now we can move on, hopefully, as like we do against any other team in Europe, where we don't have that because it is mental baggage till it's banished.
You mentioned there just about the importance of it in the context of the season, and certainly in the context of the table as well. Obviously keeps you in touch with Toulouse and with Stade as well. Does that position almost in the table, from your point of view, does that allow you a bit more room to breathe almost in a week when you've got the safety of that, or does it make an awful lot of difference?
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, and it's incredibly, I suppose, frustrating, yet a learning period when you have a game against Po. We got destroyed by Po at home, while the neutral would say there's absolutely no way that should happen. And it sums up that if you're not on high alert every week and you lack humility some weeks, you get handed a good roasting, and that's what happened. Losing to Bordeaux at home, losing to Po at home, their games, as you say, when you kind of have a look at your trajectory and what you can do with potential squad selections and points for the table. You would highlight them as victories, but in this game you just never know, Adrian. So yeah, it was very important in that regard. The key, I suppose, driver for me is the fact that we're competing on two fronts, Europe and the bouclier, which isn't the case with all the top 14 teams. Obviously, probably 6 of them are going for Europe. So you need a loaded squad and group to be able to do that. But what cost us last year was, if you're getting the first two, you get a weekend off. And a weekend off at that time, a period of the season, it gives you huge oxygen and gives you a chance to recharge or go for a stage. What's a stage in English?
A break, is it?
No, when you go for a pre-season tour or a mid-season break or a mid-season bonding trip.
Yeah.
What's the English word for that? I'm actually having a moment here. Sorry.
I love this. I once interviewed an American astronaut who studied Russian to go up to the space station, and he started dreaming in Russian. He got to the point where he was so invested. It started to happen to Ronan now. He's thinking and dreaming in French.
But you're all into sport. Tell me what a mid-season camp is. What's a stage in English?
I don't know. What is it like?
Of course, it is. If you go down to Fota, have top-class facilities, and they host all the English Premiership teams or all the GA teams or the things. What do you call that? A mid-season camp?
A team bonding, yeah.
No, it's not called that. There's a different word for it, Adrian.
It begins with R, doesn't it? I think the word we're trying to think of.
I haven't a clue. But Quinny's not jumping in here to save us. No, exactly.
With us, is he?
He's ever since Jim Williams came up, Raj, he's been very quiet.
Mid-season camp, yeah. Mid-season camp.
That's the final word on it.
What I actually think we may introduce, Shane, we've more OTB history this morning with the... Not alone have we the Ali Pally bus, we have the stage. I think that could actually fit into the English vocab better than a mid-season camp.
I'm more attracted by that one as well.
Let's get on to the Oxford English Dictionary and add it to it. Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's exactly. Come on now, back to task, boys. We have the opportunity to, if you get in the first two, you have obviously you go straight to semi-final. Yeah. While if you're third, fourth, fifth, or sixth, you go quarter-final route, which, if you're trying to compete in Europe, makes it extremely difficult. So that was what we're trying to do this year, stay in the hunt for the top two.
The injuries not easing any ahead of it tomorrow night, are they?
No, but it's the same for everyone. Interesting presentation from our medical team this week, and the fact that the journée or game 15, 16, 17, 18 is when you should have, or historically with all the data, when injuries are at their highest in the top 14, and you look at, I suppose, the injury sick bay, a lot of casualties, but that's why you put the focus on the group and not the team. So we have a lot of boys missing against Ulster, but we have to make sure that our group is strong enough.
I thought the word began with R. Cameron in our team suggested retreat. Is that the word, Ronan, you're thinking of?
Oh, that's not, because that's not really. That can be a religious retreat as well.
Yeah, a retreat is where you go to Medjugorje or Fatima or somewhere like that. Say prayers. My mum goes in them all the time.
Rugby retreat. Yeah.
The Lourdes.
We might all need one of those trips soon. Right, we're going to keep Quinny on the line. Ronan, thanks a million as always. We'll have to consideration of that word now and come back. Convalesce, somebody's saying, but I don't think it's not convalesce, is it?
No.
That's after you've had some sort of a...
Let's just go with stage, I like it.
Yeah, stage.
Yeah, you like it too, it's good. Yeah. Good, it gets the old Ross lingo back in it, the stage. Stephen Roach and the stage, Sean Kelly.
It's the pronunciation, you see. We would say Hugo Lloris, but as Ronan said last week, his kids say Ugo.
Ugo, yeah.
Exactly. Ugo's retired now from France.
You don't pronounce it.
He's gone, lads. We've lost him. He's
just trying to get rid of you, Ronan. Never mind that.
The H in French is silent. There's no such thing as... So any Harry Redknapp is Harry Redknapp, and Harry Glynn, who plays with us, is Harry Glynn. So the H is silent. Just a little bit of 1% there this morning.
You come for the behind the scenes details, La Rochelle, and you get yourself a French lesson while you're at it.
Class.
How bad? Good man.
See you, boys. Good luck.
Cheers, kid.
Quinny, come in from the cold there. Talk to us a little bit about La Rochelle and Ulster, and like how their season is going in terms of it obviously backtracking, and why that is, and if they can put it right tomorrow.
For Ulster, obviously the last few weeks have been pretty dreadful, Adrian. They've won one game in 6, which is, it's really difficult, and a lot of circumstances and things have gone against them, and they haven't got the bounce of the ball, or they haven't created the ability to see out games. I think you could go back through a couple of those games, and they're in control up in Belfast against Munster, and Munster a brilliant comeback, and they lack the ability to finish them off there. I think they had a great fight back last week in Benetton in Italy, got themselves ahead right from the kickoff. They concede the lead again, and making too many mistakes. And I think we've probably referenced it a couple of times. If you go back to that Leinster game where they were in complete control at half time, Cian Healy was red carded and Leinster turned it around. And, I know they scored just before half time. Leinster gave them a real lifeline and an energy boost going in at half time. Something isn't right there. I think psychologically, they seem wounded a little bit, and they're turning the ball over a lot and making lots of mistakes. I still think there's a good side there, very talented side. They're a strange side, and I'm sure even if we were asking ROG to analyse Ulster and strengths and weaknesses and all that kind of stuff, you'd find lots of positives and lots of danger in their attack, but turning the ball over too much. I did the game last week against Benetton commentary, and continuously they're getting into good positions, and they're a little bit porous, I think, at times, and frustrating if you're an Ulster fan. Obviously it's frustrating for the players and management as well, but it doesn't get any easier this week, does it, going to La Rochelle? And no. And this is they're out of Europe if they lose this one, really. So they're in a tough place at the moment. When you look back at the results since that Leinster game, and they've won one game in 6, you wouldn't think that's what's going to happen to Ulster given the start of the season they had. So they're in a tough place at the moment.
Yeah, we're bang out of time, but I can't let you go. So give me a 30-second answer if you can. Munster Saints obviously at Thomond tomorrow, and Munster's run and your expectations from that game tomorrow. A repeat of the previous leg.
Yeah, I think Munster need to be more clinical. We don't know what side Northampton are sending, but the last number of weeks have been in contrast to Ulster, much more positive for Munster. They're still, they're not the finished article. We know that, but they're playing a lot better. They look a lot fitter. And there was a little bit of bite in that game in November. So in December, that game in Franklin's Gardens. So test for Munster mentally. Can they? There's an expectation now for them to go out and win this game and possibly get a bonus point. Can they do that? This will be another challenge for them mentally. So I think they're in a decent place and they're making progress, but they're still short with injury. So they're ones you can't underestimate, but they have to, be going for the jugular here. And if they get 5 points, they go to 11, and they're possibly in the knockout stages. So it's a big opportunity for them, and hopefully they can build on what they've been doing. Yeah, and particularly in the last 2 weeks.
We'll have a lot more time for you, Quinny, when we chat to you next week. Thanks a million for jumping on.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks a lot. 18 minutes past 8. Louise Quinn is next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
This is Manchester United, bootleg horses being sold, and then you go online and it seems to be like, this is a good thing. You're like, it's not. Please stop telling me this is a good thing. It's not.
He was a lump, wasn't he? He was lumpy, wasn't he?
6'1", 6'2", I'd say.
But how he moved with the ball for someone of that size. Zidane could dance with the ball.
Yeah.
but dance with the ball and drop the shoulder and just manipulate. Roy probably didn't have that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Almost 8:20. Louise Quinn, good morning to you. We're going to have Louise on the line, I think, in just a moment. We're going to chat to the Birmingham. Louise, good morning to you.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Sorry, you weren't talking to me.
Take two. That's our fault, I'm sure. How are you getting on? Can you hear us there all right?
Yeah. You're talking to me. Okay.
We are. We're live on air.
Oh, we are there.
We are. Right. We're up and running. How's the form?
Yeah, it's good. How are things with you?
Good. You're 9 or 10 games into the championship season. There was a bit of chat, obviously, before the start of the season that you might have hopped from Birmingham City and taken the opportunity to stay in the WSL, but you stayed. How have you found the level over that time?
Yeah, listen, I've been really pleased. I think even just the level that we have in the club now, the players that we brought in have been, really high quality. We also brought in a brilliant assistant coach in Joe Potter, who just has, all the experience of WSL level, international level. I think it just really works. And I think just the level of the championship has really, come up in the last 2-3 years. And you can see it, the games are not easy. Everything is competitive. And you really just you can see a lot of the, WSL players filtering down as well, but it just brings that kind of strength and experience to the league. And it's something where, thankfully the clubs are trying to support these championship teams as well to get up and be at the top level, and they're just trying to support women's football.
Bit of an Irish contingent, Louise, at Birmingham City, which is always nice, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've a really good bunch, and Harriet, Lucy, Jamie, obviously, and then Eleanor has she's gone on loan now. Unfortunate for the team because she's an absolutely brilliant teammate, brilliant character, but she just hasn't maybe got the minutes that she wanted and at times maybe deserved. So she's gone to Coventry now, but we'll miss her a lot. But it's a strong Irish crew, definitely.
I remember chatting to Emma Byrne before one of the qualifiers out in Tala, and we were talking about, it was pre-match chat, we were talking about what the options were up front, and I had mentioned something to do with Quinn up front, and she was like, oh, you must have misspoken. Lucy Quinn, surely you're talking about. I was like, no, what about Louise Quinn? What has it done for your game? 32 is not by any stretch, and centre backs definitely tend to knock a bit more out of the game, Louise, maybe than other areas of the pitch. What has it done for your game in terms of your style of play and that kind of thing?
I think even now it's I've gone through phases where obviously let's say you play with Arsenal, you're very much in control of the ball, and then moved around. Sometimes in Ireland, with the Irish team, it's not the case, and then we'll say even with Blues last year, it was it was trying to survive. It was some absolute defending bodies on the line sort of stuff. Whereas now, again we have a lot of control of the ball. So again, it's just bringing me a different aspect of how I kind of can control the ball, see the pitch, make sure I'm picking the right passes with quality. You know what I mean? And that's the constant standards we're trying to keep, at Blues as well. So for me, it's that sort of playing style, but then also just captaining the team and having to lead kind of differently from last year to this year as well. And so you're just learning a lot about players and a lot about yourself as well. I'm just it is just still really enjoyable. I just love playing my football at the moment, and 32 is it's nothing.
It's the new 25 is what we're saying.
Yeah.
We'd Shabana Hearn on the show last night, Louise, and she was talking about sort of the competitiveness and like the injury updates and stuff around the Ireland squad with the World Cup in mind. Is it in your mind weekly now, or what's your relationship with the thoughts about that at the minute?
The thoughts about the World Cup are constantly there. Definitely weekly, probably daily at some days, to be honest. It's just, it's still this just sense of achievement and excitement and something, when you are a footballer, as much as, you go in and you do your hours training, it is 24/7. It's down to what you eat, it's down to what you do, it's how you recover and rest. And so you're constantly thinking about those things. And, but for us then it's obviously just making sure that we get into the February camp and, have a good camp there, get in fit, healthy, get the crew back together. And that's what's, most important for now. But it's, it's difficult not to think to the summer and what hopefully, could be.
You won't be thinking too much on Sunday about Arsenal Chelsea and the record attendance, and I'm sure you'll probably pick up on it afterwards, given your connections and interest, I'm sure, as well. But humorous for a minute and talk to us a little bit about it, if you will. It's first against second. It's set up brilliantly, really, and again, the expectation of potentially a record crowd.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'm gutted. I might only get to see the first few minutes. We have our own game, but it just seems to be, the tightest it's been in the league, for a long, long time. And you don't know which way it's going to go. I think Arsenal's ability, I think Arsenal, and, maybe sometimes still can have this mental kind of block against Chelsea. But I feel like in the last, season or so, they've really started to overcome it. And I think, you'll see a really good Arsenal. Obviously, missing Viv and Beth it could be detrimental, but I think as well, Arsenal do have a good bit of that depth now. They've made some really, really good signings. So for me, you can obviously see that I'm maybe pushing. I definitely want Arsenal to win the game. I'd love to see them go and win the title. But then also Chelsea's squad depth is, they really could make two teams, out of that squad, to be honest. And Emma Hayes just always has them ticking and mentally, physically, they're always there. So it's just really going to have to come down to potentially who wants it more, and then who can really bring out just, their individual kind of skill on the day. It could be luck, but I think it's just going to have to be, they're going to have to just put their, total ability and talent into that game.
Was interested to see the news yesterday, Louise, about Eileen Gleeson being appointed the new head of women and girls football by the FAI. Her CV speaks for itself. No better person for the job. And then Tom Elms and Andy Holt being made full time as well ahead of the World Cup. Really positive moves. What did you make of the news?
Yeah, exactly. Just really positive. It's a role that's extremely needed, and what's going to push the game forward. And as you say, I think Eileen just has, she's had her eyes and ears everywhere. In the last few years in Ireland, she knows the league like the back of her hand. She now knows, how the international setup is run. So for me, she's perfectly assigned to that. She's, incredibly intelligent and talented, and really kind of just sees, some of the football world a bit different, and can make, I think she can make a real difference. And obviously for the lads there, listen, Tom and Andy are absolutely brilliant. It's completely deserved. Should have, would have wanted it to happen a long time ago, but they've worked so hard. They're brilliant for the team. They do everything and anything for us. So for, that's it's brilliant for them.
It's good to see that focus being put into it as well to the summer, because there is the legacy from the World Cup as well. Already there's going to be a legacy from yourselves qualifying for the World Cup, but if you could even win a couple of games, progress through the group stages, I mean, that's going to do incalculable things for the future of women's football and football generally in Ireland.
Yeah, and listen, that's the plan. We're not going into it just to take part and make up the numbers. We really feel like we can, get some results. And we make games very frustrating for teams, and and now we really know how to defend our goal. Not conceding many goals at all in the last few games, but now we know how to get ourselves on the score sheet as well. So for us, it's extremely exciting. We know that we can do something, but we also know it's going to be, I think, as the time approaches, I feel, the feelings may change a bit, the nerves may kick in a lot more to something that we just haven't experienced before. But again, I think we've learned a lot in the last, year or two. And for us, it's just about, making sure we stick together, and that it's, that past experiences for us, Ukraine game exactly as an example. That's something that we've built on and kind of been able to build our mentality on as well. So it's going to be tough, but of course we want to change the way women's football is going in Ireland.
You need to get out the gap. You're what sort of a session? You've Sheffield United on Sunday. Is it light enough today, or what do you do?
It'll be a little bit of a mix. It'll be kind of small sided stuff. So small, intense, sharp sort of stuff.
Centre back getting up the pitch to knock in a few goals is what I'm hearing.
That's it, exactly, yeah. It's going to be small-sided games. You can pass the ball out wide and then run in the box yourself. So that's the plan.
Long way continue. Louise, thanks a million for jumping on.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks a lot. Louise Quinn, Republic of Ireland and Birmingham City defender. Exciting times, obviously, for her over the course of the season, and I'm sure the thoughts of World Cup for Louise and for the other players as well as the season goes on, even from an injury point of view. Like there's lots of little niggles around, and even selfishly from our point, we need the likes of Louise Quinn fit and healthy.
Yeah, when you look at the likes of Arsenal with all the ACL injuries, you don't want any of that happening. So touch wood, it doesn't happen. We'll continue along similar lines because delighted to say joining us on the line is the Arsenal writer and podcaster from Arseblog, Tim Stillman. Tim, very good morning. How are things?
Good morning. Really good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Very good. Thanks for joining us. It's a big one. We were just chatting to Louise Quinn there about Arsenal Chelsea this weekend in the Women's Super League. Was it 40,000 tickets were sold as of Tuesday? I'm sure it's gone up even more so now. There's a real appetite being whetted by this game. It's a big one.
It absolutely is, and it was 42,000 as of Wednesday evening. So I imagine we're going to hit around the 45,000 mark, and that's going to be the third time this season that a league game gets more than 40,000 tickets sold. So that's just hugely encouraging. I'm not sure I ever thought I'd live to see the day where I'd be able to just kind of casually reel off that sentence, but I mean, it's an absolutely huge one. You only have to look at the table. You only have to look at the table for the last couple of years. Both teams pretty much identical records if you take out the fact that Chelsea have played one more game. And look, these games, they have an outsized kind of impact on who wins the league. It's that simple. If one of these teams, because both teams have to play each other twice in the second half of the season, one of these teams wins both of those games, they'll win the league. I do kind of think it's that simple with respect to Manchester United and the challenge they're putting up. So it's an enormous game. And I think also having it on the same day as the North London derby on the men's side, not great for my heart and my nerves, but quite special, it has to be said.
It'll be a busy day for you for sure. Like it only serves to highlight the number of ticket sales and the interest in the WSL at the moment. I was just looking, you can see the photograph in front of me here on my screen, the wraparound at the Emirates and the new artwork that's been done around the stadium in North London, and you've got the Invincible, I think it's called Invincible, the artwork itself, where you've got the men's Invincible Premier League team of 03-04 and the women's Champions League winning team of 06-07, kind of almost holding on to their trophies. It's a really positive statement, and one that really, as I said, serves to highlight how equal the two teams are in Arsenal.
Yeah, an incredible kind of message. And I was involved in the consultations. There are around 100 or so supporters who were consulted around what should be on the wraps, and I was one of them. And I kind of went into the consultation thinking, right, what am I going to do? What am I going to bring to this? I'm going to really push for strong representation of the women's team. And honestly, my favourite thing about the whole thing is that I didn't have to, because it was unanimous that that's what people wanted to see. So it wasn't just me who goes to all the women's games and everything. Like, people were just like, yep, this is a big part of the club's history, something we're really proud of, something we want to see on the side of our stadium. And that's just so positive. This wasn't a did act from the club. This wasn't top down. This was decided by the fans that they wanted to see that. And I think that makes a really, really strong statement. And it also just shows you, the last time Arsenal did a kind of stadium wrap design was about 2007, 2008. And it just shows you really how much things have changed since then, because I can't imagine that was ever part of the conversation in 2007, 2008, probably around the time that Arsenal women were the reigning European champions. But now, 15 years later, people are saying, no, we want to see that achievement on the side of our stadium. And now the women are playing there more often. And, the club have been very open about the fact that they want that to be the case, and maybe even the permanent home of Arsenal women one day. So just absolutely incredible. And I was at the unveiling event on Wednesday night and spoke to players like Anita Asante and Leanne Sanderson, who were part of that quadruple winning team, and just asked them, what would you have said if I came back kind of from the future 15 years ago and said to you that your face will be really, really prominent on the side of the stadium? And they were both, both just kind of in disbelief, really, that something like that would happen. It's especially nice for those players who've perhaps retired, who aren't directly reaping the benefits of this kind of explosion at the moment, but have really, really contributed a lot to it. So it's really nice. It's a really nice touch to see them recognised in this way.
One of those retired players is Emma Byrne, who does a lot of work with herselves on the Koi Gig podcast here on Off the Ball. I saw, am I right in saying the other night you were given the tough task of picking the all-time Arsenal women's 11? Yes. Did Emma manage to make it?
Of course Emma made it, because first of all there wasn't really another candidate, and second of all I'm slightly scared of Emma. But yes, and the great thing is Emma's on the stadium twice, as quite a lot of the women's players are actually, because there's that quadruple winning design, but there's also a design above the away end where you've got essentially it's meant to be a little bit intimidating. So you've got some players from Arsenal's past. You've got Martin Keown with his head bandaged up, Alex Scott kind of behind a cannon facing out. So, the message there is implied but relatively strong. And Emma's on that one as well. And that's a really good choice, because Emma can be intimidating, as I'm sure you know.
Well, goalkeepers are all a bit touched, I think, in the head, so fair play to them. But I guess, Tim, from our perspective, we're already kind of building up to the World Cup this summer, and Katie McCabe is someone that comes up in conversation constantly, and for some reason, I guess her best position is often called into question. We're trying to work out where exactly on the pitch she can best be utilised. In your opinion, where is Katie McCabe's best position?
Yeah, it's someone else I'm slightly scared of. But with Katie, it's so strange, because she's one of those players who her role for her country and her role for Arsenal are just different because of the different ways that the teams have to play. I mean, on Sunday, she's probably going to play on the right wing because Beth Mead is injured. I think there was a time for Arsenal where that was her best position. I'm not sure it is anymore. For Arsenal, I think I prefer her at left back. But the thing is, with Katie, whether she plays left back or left wing, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. She's kind of doing the same things anyway. And that's enormously to Katie's credit, because it's not that easy to go from full back to the wing, when you're making runs from deep, compared to when you're getting the ball in very tight spaces and having to dribble past people. And she makes it look very, very easy. But so really there's not a lot of difference between her playing on the left wing or at left back for Arsenal, but we'll see her on the right on Sunday and kind of drift in and play almost more like a 10. But she's one of those players, honestly, I think she's great in central midfield as well. She's just one of those players who's got a bit of everything, like a proper all-rounder. But on balance, if you really pressed me, I'd probably say left back for Arsenal, but probably for Ireland, left wing back, depending on who Ireland play, of course, and whether they play with a back five or a back four.
No doubt we'll have plenty of those conversations between now and the World Cup. For the North London derby as well, the small matter, as you mentioned as well, Tim, this weekend, a huge one at 4:30 on Sunday, live commentary here and Off the Ball as well. What's the line from The Simpsons? Everything's coming up Millhouse, everything's coming up Mikel Arteta at the moment, I think.
Yeah. The season's just taken us all by surprise. It's interesting because last season, even though Arsenal missed out on their main objective in the most crushing way possible by losing it to Spurs, that didn't really impact the mood of the fan base. I think we all sensed from last season, wow, something's stirring here, something's happening here. We can see what this team is trying to do and what it can be. But I still don't think, and then, the signing of Gabriel Jesus, we all expected improvement from that, because essentially Arsenal played without a striker, without wishing to be unkind or too unkind. Arsenal played without a striker, in my view, for quite a long time last season. And then they got one. And what Zinchenko's done as well, and Saliba's done since he's come in, just those three players have just all brought the level up in their respective areas. And it's been, so far, it's been such a great season. But now I think we're all in that kind of, Arsenal fans haven't really wanted to talk about winning the league because it feels so fragile, and it feels like if we talk about it, it's going to kind of blow up in our faces. There's still that kind of feeling of tentativeness. But I mean, this period here is absolutely pivotal for Arsenal. Tottenham, Manchester United, and then they play Manchester City in February. If Arsenal come out of that in good shape, I mean, they've really got a chance, and that's all we ask for really as Arsenal fans, I think.
I presume you're also watching whatever City are doing at the minute, Tim, whether it's in the Cup or the League, and with like a nervousness almost of, maybe they're not quite the Manchester City that we knew.
Yeah, and it's another really interesting one because they did lose some big players this summer. Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko. I completely understand the justification for them for selling all of those players. I completely do. But in one go, that's three players who really, really know your system, know how to play. I mean, two of them have come into the Arsenal team and have just transferred Man City football into the Arsenal team. And I think Sterling, that's a slightly different story. But that's three really big players. And look, they brought in Haaland. So, boo-hoo for them, really. But I do think there is an element of maybe a little bit of transition there. Maybe them getting used to, maybe some players getting used to Pep football, to Man City football. I think the thing is with City, I don't look at the big games for them and think that they'll drop points. I actually think they're okay in those games. You look at who they've been dropping points against: Aston Villa, Everton, Brentford. Those are the games they've seemed to struggle slightly more in. So, I think they've got some tough fixtures. I actually think they'll come out of this period okay. It's how they deal with those kind of mid-table teams who are both kind of inferior enough to City to go there and play with 10 defenders, but also kind of good enough to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like you mentioned a couple of the acquisitions, Tim, that Arsenal have made from City in Jesus and Zinchenko. Mikhailo Mudryk from Shakhtar is the other one that is still rumbling on. I think he was available for 30 million euros in the summer. Shakhtar want up to upwards of 100 million quid at the moment. By all accounts, sounds like Shakhtar are quite a tough entity to negotiate with as well when it comes to transfers. Is this going to happen, do you think? And if so, I mean, he fits an age profile at only 22, but what do you think he'd bring to that Arsenal setup?
Yeah, I do think it will happen. I think the player, I don't think the player has exactly been private about his wish to make it happen. His Instagram account has been very entertaining this month. But, I do think it will happen because, and I think Shakhtar know this, Arsenal just need to make it happen. They are one forward short at least, and that was without Gabriel Jesus being injured. Saka and Martinelli have played a lot of minutes this season. Martinelli played the full 90 at Oxford. Like, they don't have depth in those positions, so they need someone. And I'm not sure there's too many plan Bs and plan Cs kicking around. So, fair play to Shakhtar. I think they recognise that. Shakhtar themselves have lost a lot of players recently. Like, Shakhtar have always had a great business model, particularly with Brazilians, and they get paid for their players. And, they had, because of the situation that's completely out of their control in the country, they've lost a lot of players on the cheap and some even for free recently. So, this is a payday for them. This is a Ukrainian player they're selling, not a Brazilian player this time. And yeah, they are a tough nut to crack. I think they kind of always have been. I do think it will happen. I think basically what he brings, bit of depth in those wide areas. The only thing I'm interested in is he's another right footer who plays on the left, and Arsenal have already got two of those, whereas Bukayo Saka is a left footer who plays on the right. And so it'd be interesting to see who or what the backup for Bukayo Saka is. But the little I've seen of Mudryk, he is lightning quick on the football. Like, just it looks like, you know, when you see those Pathé Cinema reels from 1930s football sped up, like he looks like that, even with the kind of Brill cream haircut. So I think he'd inject a lot of kind of pace and directness and just someone else to play on those flanks, particularly with the Europa League coming back in March.
We're used to seeing other clubs, Tim, get involved in transfer, I guess, sagas and entanglements and constantly long, drawn-out battles to acquire a signature. It's not a very Arsenal thing, and it's not a very Arteta thing, so it's quite a rare moment to see this process play out in front of us when it comes to Mudryk.
It's a strange one, actually, because Arsenal have been, I mean, this one's been even more public, I think because the club kind of know they have to sell the player, really. Like, this is, if they don't sell him in January and he doesn't have a very good couple of months, I mean, the market's so wild that, like you said, he's kind of gone from 30 million to 100 million in a couple of months. Could easily go back the other way with a couple of bad months. But, I mean, what has been a feature of Arsenal's transfer business under Arteta is he will push the boat out, or rather the club will push the boat out for players he really wants. So Arsenal didn't really want to go to 50 million for Ben White, but they did it. They didn't really want to go to 35 million for Aaron Ramsdale, but they did it. Like, guys who come in and play in the first team, who get in the first 11, Arsenal do tend to pay up. And again, Shakhtar probably know that. But what's interesting here is Mudryk, you know, he's not going to get past Saka. You know, he's probably not that good. Martinelli would be more the spot he'd be challenging for. But again, that's a big. But then in the wide areas, you kind of rotate a little bit more anyway. So this does feel a little. This is a bigger sum, and this does feel a little bit like, actually, if we're playing a cup final tomorrow, this guy might not be in the starting 11, and we're going to pay like, you know, upwards of 80 million or so. So I think it's different in that respect. This is a different number to the likes of Ben White and Aaron Ramsdale.
And it could be similar to, I guess, the Casemiro at Manchester United thing, where it takes a bit of time to bed in and finally get into that starting 11. Gabriel Martinelli was one of the names you mentioned there. I was really interested last night. I was reading one of your pieces on Arseblog on Martinelli and his futsal background. Some people will be familiar with futsal, and the indoor soccer with the heavier football improves the first touch. I guess heavily played in Brazil as well. Fascinated to read how imperative futsal has been to Martinelli's development as a player, and even how you write about in your piece how Martinelli can almost recognise other players with a futsal background simply based on their first touch and the way they play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. He does that thing. The giveaway of a futsal player is they'll kind of take the ball, they'll trap it under their foot and then roll it forwards. And that's a bit of like a matador style, because you want to attract the player and then push the ball past him and run. And that's a lot of what Martinelli's game is built on right there. Like, when he gets the ball, he wants to move. When he doesn't have the ball, he wants to move. It's funny, I think he's underrated because he's actually not a particularly elegant player to watch. There's not a lot of step overs or tricks in there. It is push and run. And actually the player himself says he's incredibly influenced by Cristiano Ronaldo. I think particularly Ronaldo's early career when he was playing on the left. And, you know, Ronaldo cut all of that out of his game and eventually became this machine of just kind of taking the quickest route to goal, the most direct route to goal as possible. And that's Martinelli plays like every minute is the 89th minute, basically. And a lot of that comes from futsal, because that's how futsal is. It's a small pitch. You got players in your face all the time. And, you know, it's a hard court. It's a hard ball. You've got to give it a whack, really. You've got to really hit the back of the ball. And it's just so, and the toe poke as well. So Romario was another player, big futsal player. And that toe poke finish that we all associate with him, go back and watch Martinelli's goal against Brighton, because it's a Romario finish, it's a futsal finish.
Yeah, futsal written all over it. Finally for me, Tim, just to get your prediction then ahead of the North London derby this weekend. It's hard to believe that it was a 3-0 defeat for Arsenal back in May. You know, losing that fight in the battle for top four and the run to the Champions League places. I mean, if you'd said that by the following January things would be looking this different and Arsenal will be heavy favourites in some ways heading into the game this weekend, people would thought you were crazy. But how do you see the game going?
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal were very injury depleted, particularly in the back line that day. Rob Holding, Cedric, Tomiyasu had to come off. Gabriel got injured and had to come off. I mean, it's a very different Arsenal. I think with this one, the first goal is going to dictate everything. I really do, because it's going to be Arsenal doing what they always do, looking to press teams back. Arsenal always try to score quickly. Which sounds redundant because every team wants to do that. But Arsenal's record of scoring in the first 20 minutes this season is very, very good. And that really allows them to dominate games. Obviously, we know what Tottenham are going to do equally as well. They're going to sit back, try and soak it up and hit Arsenal on the counter. So I think the first goal will have an outsized importance. Also, please don't think I'm bringing like conspiracy theories or anything into this. Tottenham get a lot of penalties against Arsenal, and like most of them aren't debatable decisions. I think the one in May was a very debatable decision, but basically Arsenal have to try not to give a penalty away, because that's made this fixture a lot harder for them in recent years. And I think a lot of us are thinking Harry Kane is only one goal off the Tottenham goal scoring, or equaling the Tottenham goal scoring record. And that feels a little bit ominous, and like we might have to score more than one goal to win the game. I think this will be incredibly tight, but I also think Arsenal are massively overdue a win at Spurs. It's been nearly 10 years, so I'm going to stick my neck out and say that Arsenal are going to do it 2-1.
I love it. Bit of confidence never hurts. Tim, great stuff as always. Thanks a million for joining us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Brilliant. Tim Stillman there, the Arsenal writer and podcaster with Arseblog.
Off the Yockey says a new name for the darts Netflix series is Turkin, your buddy, is back again.
Off the Yockey, yeah, not a bad one.
Your cousin.
Darts, yeah. Darts and snooker actually lend themselves quite nicely to show names. There's plenty of puns in there, I think.
Does Rog mean R&R, as in rest and relaxation, wonders Gary Flynn? We're all wondering, Gary Flynn. Well, we still haven't managed to nail that one.
No, I think it's just a French word, and it has no proper translation that's going to satisfy Ronan, so we're just going to stick with the French.
Alright, do keep the comments coming into us. We've still lots to come on the show with you between now and 10 this morning. We're going to talk to actor and broadcaster Simon Delaney. He's got a brand new show. It's all about Manchester United. It's in the Civic Theatre in Tala on Sunday, and we've talking a bit about that and obviously about United as well. And we're also going to speak to the producers of the brand new Netflix docu-series Breakpoint. It's following the game of tennis, as you might have guessed, and that is to come as well. Before all that, time for the papers. Kathleen, good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Willie, for jumping in. Let's just sort of go through.
You talked about WSL and Arsenal and the World Cup, so I kind of felt like it was only right that I...
Continuity
here.
Yeah.
Coach. Right, here is we'll kick off at the Irish Daily Mirror. Felix the Splat, as in Felix the House Cat. Blue Star red carded on debut as Chelsea crash again. The City slackers, Gundogan dig at his own team ahead of Derby. A lack of desire and wrong attitude. I mean, you could say dig, but it's very Roy Keane style quote.
G'd him up. Sorry, I'm not having Felix the Splat at all.
Really?
That's crap. I've heard better.
And then Ferdinand, jury is still out on Eric Ten Hag as United boss.
Jesus.
I thought the jury had delivered their verdict and they were fairly happy.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier, I think the thing with it is more that he has to actually go on a run. So he's doing great now. That's fair enough. I don't think anyone would doubt that. But he has to sustain it past the rest of the season and into next season, and then we'll be like, okay, actually Ten Hag is a good manager.
I find it quite ironic that Rio Ferdinand is saying the jury's still out when he was the one on TV who said get the contract out for Ole Solskjaer after one win against PSG. I mean, make your mind up.
Maybe he's just been so burnt by that now that anything he says,
he's going the total opposite way.
But it's kind of classic United former player who's now pundit. They flip-flop so much. 100%. They're either totally supportive of a manager 1 minute, or else they're like, no, we have to get him out, or they're old buddies with him and they're like, oh no, we should give him more of a chance. Cough, cough, Solskjaer.
I'm not having that at all from Rio. Sorry, Rio.
The Irish Sun this morning reflects on that Fulham game yesterday. Ow, Felix, you're probably a bit happier with that shit, are you? No, he's still not happy. I mean, God, Romani, you're wearing that jumper to suggest you have any taste in relation.
Shots fired.
Your boy Zhao sees red on debut. Potter under fire as Blues hit 12-year low, and United can't buy the best. This is my wife said to me yesterday afternoon. I see Harry Cantona said that Man United have they're not able to get the best players anymore. I was like, were you reading an article from 10 years ago? What's the story?
Yeah.
This is not new news, Eric Cantona. This is bizarre. No? Like,
yeah,
shock horror.
Time warp.
The Irish Daily Star this morning, gunslinger Ilkay Gundogan has accused Manchester City teammates of lack of desire. Rio says the jury's out. More reflections there as well on the Fulham-Chelsea game. And an interesting article here, Mick Scully writing that the Clarets bid for Oba has been rejected. Michael Obafemi remains a Swansea player after Burnley's latest attempt to sign the Ireland striker was rejected. It's been a bit of a saga for him, you'd have to say. They've offered £2.5 million to get him out of there. And reading the quotes of Martin Russell, his current manager, who it seemed as if the relationship was not all that rosy, he says everything's just fine. I love the lad, he said at some point or another, which you take it as read. And we've knocked back 2 bids back from Michael, and basically they want to get more money for him, and they will then.
When's his actual contract up? Like the one he has at the moment? Is there left?
I don't know. They had offers for him last summer. I don't know what the duration of his contract is, but he's clearly not happy. There's something about him that they're clearly not happy with.
Apparently it's summer of 2024 his contract runs to at Swansea. Like Burnley would be top of the Championship. Look like they're going to get promoted. Vincent Kompany at the helm will be a good one. Francie Brady says in the comments Shane's not having anything this morning, but there's one actually in the front of the Star. Where is it? Felix the Brat as Blues lose again. That's actually a slight bit better.
Francie Brady, of course, another one of your relations.
I'm not familiar with Francie Brady.
Counties.
Yeah, it does sound like a bit of a Monaghan name there. It's a Cavan name, Brady, actually.
And Fergus Keogh also suggesting that we should have asked Roger to pronounce Nola great, as he'd probably have done a better job than Cameron.
Cameron did okay.
Fair observation. The Irish Daily Mail, meanwhile, show respect. Marsh tells Leeds fans to change chant. Ciao Felix.
Ah, that's good.
You having that?
I'll have that.
That's probably the best.
That's actually the best. Yeah. Ciao Felix, brilliant. He's not Italian. It would have been better if he was Italian, but still.
That horror tackle, as it's described here, as you saw read. And then Connacht GA hit out at disgusting coverage, writes Michael Clifford. Connacht Secretary John Prenti has described media reaction to his province's Senior Football Championship draw as disgusting. And there's been some reaction to it in this show as well. It's the fact that you have Division 4 teams, Sligo, Leitrim, London and New York, all on one side of the draw, and then you have like realistic All-Ireland title contenders all bunched on the other side of the draw. But the disgusting nature to it, I haven't seen. Maybe some of that exists out there. I think it's fair enough to be critical of kind of a weird draw.
Like, I'm not, as a Sligo person, not particularly looking forward to it if we do go on a run. It's not fun watching your team get absolutely hammered, and I was kind of happy enough when the Tailteann Cup came in, and I was like, oh, this could be a good way of, actually like growing the game in Sligo if we manage to go on a run somewhere like that. I'm very unlucky in that the majority of the teams I support are not very good a lot of the time. It's changing slightly this season.
Oh yeah, Arsenal and Down, both on the way up.
Well, see, this is the thing. Like, the last time I remember enjoying GA success was 2010, Down. I went to the semi-final against Kildare with my dad, and my dad left me at home for the final, which I have never let him forget. And I had to watch with people who don't really like GA or just like didn't really know what was happening. And they were talking about like, oh, there's like an 80-yard free and all this sort of stuff. And I was just sitting there being like, please let this end. So yeah, I've never let my dad forget that he left me behind. And now I'm saying it on national radio as well, so everyone knows how much he betrayed me. But like, I remember getting such a buzz off that, and I've never really had that for Sligo. And I was hopeful that having something like the Tailteann Cup would mean that you could have success, because I think when you're from a smaller county and maybe a county that doesn't have that same sort of footballing success, you're not looking to win the All-Ireland, you're not looking to go head to head with the top counties in the country. You just want to have a bit of crack and a bit of fun and enjoy your football and not turn up to every match knowing that you're going to get absolutely whacked. So that's the thing that really frustrates me about this, because they had so many solutions that they could have put in place so that this happened less and less, and they could have like grown the game and developed the game more in those smaller counties, and then maybe down the line there would have been an opportunity for them to, like, we don't know. Sligo's a big hurling county these days, it's developed so well over the last couple of years, and that's because the work has been put into it, and there are separate competitions you can compete in and kind of, build people's loves for it. Because like, as well, kids aren't going to want to start playing GA and be like county players if they know they're getting thrashed in Connacht finals and in All-Ireland draws every year.
I do definitely buy some of the, like, it's nice to get to a provincial final, and I've been that soldier a lot of times over the last 15-20 years, where the pleasure of winning the provincial semi-final with the reward being a guaranteed thumping at the hands of Dublin is nobody's idea of a great day out. So there's probably a bit of folly about that. It's short-lived, and there's you get to tap into. I always talk about the elitism of GA, Kathleen, and the 3 or 4 or 5 counties that get to enjoy the spoils at the top, and how much we spend so much of our time talking about that at the expense of all the rest of us poor soldiers. Well, you could just do what I do, just like saunter on into an unbelievable winning club and jump
a
on
super
the
club. I think the term is
a club that are super. Yeah, absolutely. I bought my tickets actually yesterday for Sunday week, so I'm ready for action. It's the club final.
They'll be handy enough, God, will they? Yeah, they will be, sure.
They will, yeah, no, they will. Yeah, they will. Yeah. Well, you want to be, obviously, I wanted to get my tickets amongst my own people.
Of course. So, I'm going to have I might go as well and have the Malachy O'Rourke sign.
I was actually thinking of going as well. Just, I want to see Malachy O'Rourke in action after Shane waxing lyrical about him for the last few months.
I'd say even Malachy O'Rourke is a bit surprised about how
well, he had seen the clips. He had seen the clips. He came on with us and he had seen me profess my love for the man. So, look, I've met him a few times.
I'm going to go with my Malachy O'Rourke sign.
I don't quite have one, but I'll make one up for sure, 100%. The FBD League is something that's got me a little bit concerned about the Connacht Championship this year. Albeit it would be lovely to, for the Sligo players or the Leitrim players to make a provincial final. You just don't want to see an absolute hockeying. Now the FBD League doesn't mean anything. It's a pre-season competition, of course we know that. But this scoreline had completely passed me by. Roscommon and Leitrim last week. Roscommon 7 goals and 16 points. Leitrim 7 points. I had completely missed that. So 7 goals Roscommon scored and Leitrim scored 7 points.
It's pretty depressing.
It's remarkably one-sided.
Yeah, and look at you would feel with the FBD League that result could just as handily been the other way around. As in, I don't know how much you want to read necessarily. Look, I do take the point. It could end up being that in the Connacht final is the danger.
You wouldn't be surprised. Now, obviously, the gap you'd imagine will be a bit closer, but it only serves to highlight the one-sided nature of the Connacht Championship. You've got the 3 teams and then a massive fall-off in some ways. That's not to say that one of them can't mount somewhat of a challenge.
I would love if we could change the structure so that the other 3 provinces were a bit more equal and we could just keep Ulster the way it is, because my main reason for not wanting to get rid of the provincial championships is I just enjoy Ulster too much, and I love how competitive it generally is, and the matches are just so fun to watch, and generally when it gets to the final you're probably going to have a bit of a competition compared to any of the other provinces, really.
Yeah. You just don't get it
No.
The Irish Times this morning, Delaney thriving at La Rochelle after switching from Connacht. This is ahead of the Ulster game, obviously tomorrow. We've been talking to Ronan O'Gara about earlier on. Interesting chat with John O'Sullivan there about how his mum wanted to play in France. His dad is French and he came to live in Ireland very young, but is back now playing there. Slow burner Keenan aiming for Leinster landmark as he racks up 50 caps this weekend. And a thought piece from Johnny Watterson as well. Whole new ball game here. The many lives of a once troubled Ronnie O'Sullivan, which I'd picked through earlier on, and it's a good read. It's very thoughtful. He's obviously been dumped. I think when you get beaten at these tournaments, there's no other way to say it than dumped out of the UK Masters.
Yeah,
Mark Williams.
And the Masters tournament is one that Ronnie has won, I think it's 7 times. It's an Ali Pally for the last decade, so Ronnie loves that atmosphere. It's raucous. He went 3-0 up against Williams yesterday and then 4-2 up, and Williams came back to win 6-5 in a decider. First time he's beaten him in 8 years. 2 of the class of 92. But yeah, Ronnie is just one of those sports people, isn't he, that fascinates everyone. I think Ronan O'Gara mentioned him a few weeks ago with ourselves, and he has pinpointed the work he's done with Steve Peters, the psychologist who wrote that great book, the Chimp Paradox. And snooker is such a mental sport that you have to have that aspect of your game and your life completely sewn up.
The way you said mental sport there, I thought you meant as in it's hectic and there's so much going on, and I was like, that's not the word I would use.
But what I mean is, I guess you sometimes have to sit there in the chair and watch your opponent clear up, and there's nothing you can. It's not like football or team sport where you can actually do something about it. You just have to sit there and hope that they miss, and that's mentally draining at the best of times. So you're almost
more like golf or something.
Yeah, exactly. But at least with golf you can control your own game, and I suppose it's the same with snooker. Once you're at the table. But unlike golf, you're waiting for the moment at which you can get on the table and do some damage. So yeah, Ronnie's such a fascinating character.
The Irish Examiner, People Power, Ronan O'Gara and the Value of Connection with Supporters. So that's Ronan's think piece inside about how they really can be the 16th man. It definitely, if you're sort of on the fence about the value of fans, it's definitely a really good insight into the impact that they can have. And Maurice Brosnan has been over to chat with the Irish players at Tranmere, and it's a lengthy piece that I have to admit I haven't yet had the chance to read on, but it certainly looks like something I'll get my teeth into later on.
That's fascinating. Rog, on fans, like, do you think fans have an impact? Like, Roy Keane is one of these people who, anytime you talk about fans having an impact on the outcome of a match, he's like, are the fans on the pitch? Are they doing the work?
I think you saw during COVID that it might depend on the team or the sport, but it does make a massive difference. Like, there were so many of those matches during COVID where the teams just look a bit flat.
And the away teams were getting more results than ordinarily they would have.
Yeah, exactly. So it clearly does have some impact, whether it's like subconsciously or something on players.
Yeah.
And just with general enjoyment. Like, I don't know how much of when you're on the pitch are you actually listening to the crowd and thinking, you know, oh, it's great to hear the chants or it's great to hear this. But I think when there's like a big moment, teams definitely do feel that swell behind them. You know, you go from a goal down to 2 goals up and you have that swell of the crowd behind you. You see the team is starting to perform well. You can see them almost like lean into it a little bit more and lean into the enjoyment of it. So I do think it does make a difference somewhere.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I mean, like, I don't know. That's the we don't know because we haven't been at the pitch in front of Shane.
But you know, even yourself, like, I'm sure you've played like football or whatever it was, and you hear the supporters on the sideline, and it does give you a boost, whether it's like 100 people, 20 people, or 80,000. Like, obviously, 80,000 people is going to give you a bit more of a boost, and you're going to hear it a bit more. But I think, you know, you've probably played club games or something at some stage. Shane, I know you're still out there on the field.
How many would you get in Monaghan United?
Monaghan matches, yeah. Monaghan are another team in the league, actually. A bit of a rivalry there. It wouldn't be a massive crowd. If you got 50 or 60 people at a match.
All right.
You're doing all right.
How did you get on against Cavan yesterday?
It's a nil win.
Huh?
We're close to the top. We're close to the top of the table. There's
a lot of things that confuse me. Shane,
there's a few rivalries there, but that's.
I'm enjoying Shane this week. Shane is in his cheeky mood this week.
Nil, is what you said.
Yeah, you know when you're up the top of the table and you're away from home and you just want to get a.
Sounds like a bit of a striker issue there. That's
you know, just sometimes you have to do defensive duties. I got it wrong. It wasn't the FBD league. It was hurling that Roscommon beat Leitrim.
Right. Okay.
So 7-21 or 7 goals.
Well, let's strike that conversation from the record.
It does make more of sense. It was more of a hurling.
I was thinking we surely would have heard something, or there would have been some headlines.
I was like, this
about
totally passed me by. There's a reason it passed me by because it didn't happen.
He just talks about, like, look, I as I said, who knows about this stuff, but you listen to the people who've been there, and Ronan's obviously been there. He says about over Christmas calling out the La Rochelle faithful, and they've like sold out the Stade Marcel for like, I don't know, a number of games in a row.
Yeah,
but it's a lot. 16,000 people paying in every week. He said that he called them out for being asleep in their top 14 defeat at home to the rivals Bordeaux Begley, and he's really thoughtful about it as a thing. It's not like he talks about players are not automatons. They're never precisely the same emotional pitch at any moment of the day, much less at precisely 3:15 on a Saturday. Human emotions are not a linear thing. When the team is on its knees, it's at that moment that they need an extra lift from the crowd, and he goes on to expand on that, and also how the fans are not automatons. But it's just an interesting view on something that I would be slightly more cynical about. I'd probably be more in the Roy Keane camp of how much, it does obviously create an amazing atmosphere when you've 80,000 people in a stadium, but how much impact does it specifically have in the outcome?
If you took the fans out of Craven Cottage last night, would the result have been the same? I know there's no way of us telling, but it was fairly raucous as Fulham beat Chelsea last night, and who's to say that it wouldn't have been reversed completely if there had been no fans, or more Chelsea fans for that matter.
Well, I think the point you made earlier is literally the most factual thing we can point to say that it does actually make a difference. Is the COVID, the fact that like more teams that were playing away won during that time.
Yeah,
you can't really
scientific study essentially over COVID.
Yeah, and didn't Liverpool have some of their worst results at Anfield as well? People put it down to the fans not being their form this year might show that they were heading a different way already. Right. But just like clubs like that have very iconic fans, the fact that they suffered. Like, I used to watch when I was working at ESPN at the time, and I watched like quite a lot of Bundesliga, and their fans are just incredible. Like, it's almost more fun sometimes watching what the fans are up to than the actual football on the pitch. And it was just such a different feeling watching it. You know, it just didn't feel like the Bundesliga. It didn't feel like that real German passion that they put behind every single game. And when the first few games that I watched with fans back, there was probably like 50% capacity. Even at that, you were like, okay, this is such a difference. I actually didn't realise at the time how much it was missed. As I know that's a viewing experience, but you could just see even the players. They just looked more energetic. They looked more up for it.
There's two stories that we want to touch on in the papers before we wrap and chat with Simon Delaney. One of them from the Irish Independent, and it's Sinead Kassan, and pointing out that the Ireland rugby team are going to change colour shorts to navy from next season to alleviate player concerns about wearing traditional white shorts when having their periods. And as she says, it's a move that's reflective of a growing trend in women's sport. A lot of teams are jumping on board with it now, and you would think that once they'd sort of made the decision, this is great, let's go for it. Backlogs in production apparently mean that they can't do it this year, that the shorts literally can't be produced in time, so they have to wait until it won't be in place for this year's Six Nations. But no, nevertheless, very positive move.
I thought it was interesting as well. In Sinead's article, she was saying that the English FA have also approached FIFA about changing the white shorts for the World Cup this summer. And I know, like, I just feel like the all white English kit is probably one of the most iconic ones, and I'm just interesting to see like how fans react to it. Like, I know in terms of the general people who probably watch the World Cup and stuff, this is pretty normal now in terms of teams changing their shorts from white to a darker colour, but I'm interested to see what the general reaction from the England fan group is. It is so good though. Like, I remember when I played football, like, we'd play in white shorts and like the absolute dread whenever you'd be on your period. And like, there were times, I remember there was one time like that I did bleed through my shorts, and the opposition were like mocking you for it, and like the fans on the side were mocking you for it. And you know, if you're playing a game, you don't necessarily have the option to run off in the middle of the match and be like, I'm just going to do a quick change, guys, I'll be back.
Yeah.
And it's something Leah Williamson talked about, because she suffers from endometriosis. And, you know, the fact that when you're in the middle of the game, there are so few outs for you, so that if you have the opportunity to make it a little bit easier for yourself and have one less thing on your brain that you have to think about, why wouldn't you just go for it? So yeah, no, it is great to see that Irish team doing this, although it is going to be weird watching them play in navy shorts.
I would have thought there'd been a bit more solidarity, by the way, than like whatever about the fans, and that is bad enough, but like opposition or whatever, I mean, I would have thought
not at all, like people, I mean, I know people have a certain view of like women's sports and stuff, but some of the, like, the sledging is horrendous. Some of the stuff that gets said on the pitch. I remember a friend of mine broke her arm, and it was on the pitch, and like, it was just a bad tackle. It wasn't any malice behind it, but the stuff the fans were saying to her was just awful. So yeah, no, you get sledged for that sort of stuff all the time. Or even if you're, unlike me, if you didn't actually read through, they would just make random jokes about the period, appearances. It's not really talked about all that much, and I wonder, maybe is it the same in the higher echelons? I presume it is, but I knew when I was playing club football, people were vicious.
Well, the more that we sort of talk about it in the Joe Marler conversations, even from last weekend, makes it a bit sort of less acceptable to do it then. The other thing that we just wanted to mention was Martin Ziegler has it in the Times this morning, London Times this morning, TV crews told Film Infantino. Now, like, it on the face of it is quite a salacious story. It is obviously has become a somewhat controversial character, has he? Probably has.
Oh, for sure.
And this was a directive that was given to a Swiss company that were effectively the host broadcaster, who would supply these pictures and whatever else to the various broadcasters around the world. And yeah, so there was a email sent out to say, please do capture Infantino when he's at these games. He went to every single match of the World Cup. He was at every single match of the World Cup for at least some time, which I think is probably the most egregious.
The first 2 minutes at least.
Like, it was just a pure optics thing. I'll be there. They'll catch me on camera, but while you're catching me on camera, don't ever catch me on the phone.
He was generally shown at the start or the end of matches as well, wasn't he?
There was apparently some director who did manage at some point to catch him while he was on the phone, and admonished was what it says here. But yeah, and then there was other stuff like, don't film when he's with a sheikh, don't film them from below the knees, because there was some sort of cultural sensitivity. That's fair enough. I think that makes a bit of sense. But yeah, and then they would also show him on TV, but not on the big screen in the stadium, because he was getting roundly booed or whatever. There was one sort of paragraph that stood out for me here that I thought was sort of a side note to the article almost, but maybe speaks more to the point that's trying to be made more than the specifics of the TV directors. They talked about the host broadcaster company. HBS is based in Zug, Switzerland, and is a specialist host broadcast organisation that was set up initially to produce FIFA World Cups in 2002 and 2006. It now covers many large sports events. It's a subsidiary of Infront, which was taken over by China's Wanda Group in 2015. Wanda is also a FIFA sponsor. So if you've stayed with all of that, that for me deserves more conversation and more digging. Slightly unusual, very unusual. FIFA basically paying itself to produce its own.
Wouldn't be like FIFA.
Content.
No, I mean, whatever about him being on the phone at the matches, he was certainly on the phone at Pele's funeral, taking selfies near the body as well. So, as we say in Monaghan, he's a dose of shite, hey. He's just one of those people that he keeps cropping up in these negative stories. You're like, jeez, would you ever just get out of here?
Yeah, and like, look, he probably, I'm sure, had something to do with that, but obviously there's communications people and PR people and all that sort of stuff too. That is the papers. All right, it's 9:15. Do keep the comments coming into us, whatever it is that you are watching us this morning. We still are going to have a tennis chat to come for you. We're going to be talking to the producers of the brand new Netflix documentary, which dropped this morning. Breakpoint. I have to always think about that one in my head.
Point Break.
Yeah. So that's coming your way in about 15 minutes' time. Before all of that, Simon Delaney, welcome back to the show.
Morning. How are we?
How are you getting on?
Yeah, very good.
You're a bit better than the last time we were chatting to you.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a different 6 months for United, all right, this time.
I meant more from a health point of view from your side. You're feeling a bit...
yes, I had the lurgy, yes. Yeah, well, I've rid myself of that and I'm back amongst the community now, thank God.
Well, and we need to get on to how great United are at the minute, of course. Tell us, first of all, the Civic Theatre, Sunday, it's in Tala. What's happening?
Yeah, so we've got the Red Devils Road Show, which is a show that I put together with football journalist Tom McDermott, who's Manchester based. He's been covering United for years. We've been pals for years, and we came up with this notion about 6 months ago. And lucky enough, we didn't put the show on 6 months ago because I think it would have been a very different vibe in the theatre tomorrow if we had. But the idea was that it was a group. We could put together a group therapy session for United fans, because I have a WhatsApp group with various United fans, celebs and mates and that in it, and over the last sort of 6-7 years that the group's been running, it has been the therapy group, so we decided we might try and share that with the rest of the United fans out there. So we put together this 2-hour show. We've got former players coming on. We've got Al Foran, a big United fan. He's going to be on the show too, and then we're going to talk about, you know what, one thing that I wanted to talk about, Adrian, was the connection between United and Ireland. You know, why does a club in the northwest of England have such a big support here? And we look at that, and I was lucky enough a couple of years ago to do a documentary for MUTV which looked into that question. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to pick our best all-time United 11s. We're going to pick our worst all-time United 11. We're going to ask the audience to do the same. We're going to have a Q&A with the audience, talk about the current situation, the current crop, the players, the transfer market, which of course is open. And of course we're on the day after the Manchester derby, so we'll see how that goes. I think we could be.
Before we go down that path, what was your major conclusion about the Irish connection? Was it to do with the Giles and the pre-Giles, the player side? Was it a success, or what was your conclusion on it?
It's a lot of things. I mean, I toured around Ireland and the UK interviewing various people for that documentary, and you know, it opened my eyes as a United fan to, you know, like a lot of United fans don't think football existed before 1992, which of course it did, but it was things like the Munich air disaster, you know, which obviously had some Irish involvement in that. Liam Whelan was one of the players who was killed. He scored 52 goals in the season before the Munich air disaster. He was quite the player, and his funeral back in Dublin, there were, I think it was 300,000 people on the streets. You know, that kind of connection. Then it goes back to emigration as well. You know, when the Irish left here, they went to London, to Liverpool, to Manchester, and a lot of the Irish ended up working on the railways in Manchester. And the Lancashire Railways had a football team, which then became Newton Heath, which then became Manchester United. So they've had support right the way through. And one of the other things I did in the show was I tried to come up with a United made up exclusively by Irish players. That was my challenge. And I did, and I picked a United team made up solely of Irish players, and it's a team that could win the World Cup and alone win the Premier League. It's a super team. But we went back and discovered the first player who played for United, which was back in the late 1890s, a guy called John Pedden from Belfast. It was a fascinating look at why the connection is so strong between United and Ireland. So we're going to be talking about that, as well as the current state of the club.
If you need to grab a drink of water, by the way, go for it. I've just done the same thing myself here.
I have my cup of tea.
You have your cup of tea. Good man. Do you have that team in front of you?
The United Irish 11.
Yeah.
I can probably remember off by heart. It's Harry Gregg in goal. Moran and McGrath centre half. Right back Dennis Irwin. Left back Tony Dunn. And then a 3-man midfield of Keane, Sammy McIlroy and Norman Whiteside, and up front then George Best and Frank Stapleton. It's not a bad team, is it?
Oh my God. Who are we leaving on the cutting room floor? That's off the charts.
There's a lot of people on the bench. John O'Shea's on the bench. John O'Shea.
John O'Shea can goals even as a sub for Harry Gregg, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. There's a rake of players on the bench, but it was a serious team. And the great thing about doing the documentary was that I went and I met my heroes. Like I interviewed Paul McGrath and Kevin Moran and Norman Whiteside actually was the best one, because I started the interview with Norman Whiteside by saying, Norman, the first time I ever cut somebody's photograph out of a newspaper and stuck it in a scrapbook, it was his. And I remember the exact moment he scored in the semi-final of the FA Cup against Arsenal, a cracking left-footer volley, I think 83, I think it was. And he was my man, he was my player, and so getting to meet him and chat to him about being in the dressing room, and also talking to Paul McGrath about the importance of having other Irish voices in the dressing room when he went over. As he said, he was so enamoured and in awe of just the physical size of Old Trafford, and he said, I remember walking in the dressing room and seeing Brian Robson and thinking, oh Jesus Christ, there's Brian Robson. And he said, and he shared digs with Norman Whiteside, and he said they didn't always get on because, as he said himself, they were both from different political sides of the tracks, but he said we eventually became great mates. But he said that was important for him to have that other Irish voice in the dressing room to help him settle in.
It might seem like an obvious thing to say, Simon, but even when on match days at Old Trafford, and it's the same for Liverpool and other clubs as well. Yeah. But the Irish influence, it cannot be understated how many Irish fans are over there in the pubs and in the city centre before games. It's quite incredible.
It is incredible, and it's the same for Leeds as well. You go to the airport any weekend, you'll see that makeup of Leeds jerseys, United jerseys, Liverpool jerseys. It is quite staggering, and it all goes back to the same thing. It goes back to emigration, to Irish families going over there, and then it helps them when there's Irish players at the club. I mean, United have always had a strong Irish connection, not so much in the recent years, but there's always been a huge Irish influence at the club in terms of the players. And when you're seeing Eamon Dunphy talks about it in the documentary. He talks about, United fans, their connection with Liam Whelan, or Billy Whelan as he was known. He said, when you're seeing a fella from your area playing for Manchester United, it just connects you straight away to it, But yeah, absolutely, the airport's packed with the various different jerseys on Saturday mornings. It's incredible.
And it's like, I know some people who are strictly fans of the League of Ireland and don't touch on any teams over in England, sometimes get annoyed, and they're like, but Jesus, could you not support the team local to you? But there's such a massive cohort of fans now who do support their local League of Ireland team and also head over to England for these matches as well, Simon.
Of course there are. I mean, my interest in football started with the League of Ireland. My father was from Cadbury. He was a big Bows fan. I, for some reason, ended up as a Shells fan. I can't remember why or how. Probably because my dad was a Bows fan. But I remember going to Dalymount and watching the derbies up there, and being lifted over the turnstile because you were too small to push through them yourself and all that. So, the League of Ireland absolutely started my interest, and I still keep an eye on Shells results, etc. But look, just because that argument does my head in when you see it on Twitter. I bet you've never been to a League of Ireland game. Well, I've never been to a basketball game either. Doesn't mean I can't like basketball. You know what I mean? I watch American football. I've never been to an American football game. You're allowed to be a fan of these sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'd be with you on that one for sure. Come here, you mentioned the Manchester derby, so have to have it at Old Trafford tomorrow. And Rio Ferdinand, I had to do a double take this morning in some of the papers. He's saying that the jury is still out on Eric Ten Hag. Now, the jury will be back, obviously, if they get the win tomorrow. But it sort of felt to me as if the jury was already back and they were pretty happy.
Yeah, no, I saw you, Shane, mention the whole thing of, put the contract on the table, I mean, it's a bit rich, Rio, coming from it. The jury's not still out. And I'm saying that as a United fan and as someone who talks to United fans all the time, he is the man for the job. There's no question about it. When you've gone one defeat, I think, in 19 now since the last Manchester derby, I think he's turned the club around, and I don't mean that we're now going to be champions for the next 10 years. That's not what I mean. What I mean is he's turned the attitude around. He's turned the dressing room around. He's got rid of most of the toxicity that was in that dressing room. There's still a little bit there, I think, but I think what we can all see is that he's the change in the attitude towards discipline and attitude. You turn up late for a meeting. He had it with Garnacho. Last year he did it. He dropped him. Rashford did the same thing. He dropped Rashford, and I like that. I remember Fergie did that back in the day with Beckham. If you remember the famous night that Beckham came out of the nightclub in London wearing the sarong. Do you remember that? And I think they had a Champions League quarter-final the next day at Old Trafford. And he didn't just drop him, but he made him come to the ground and sit in the stands and watch the game. Now, they were back in the days when United were so strong you could leave Beckham out. But, that discipline was there. Now, Fergie had his falling out with various different players and coaching staff over the years. That comes with that, I think. It's the same with ROG Quinny. It's that attitude. It comes with that. And I think Ten Hag has absolutely changed that attitude and that atmosphere, and he's changed the style of football. And we're certainly in a better place tomorrow going into the Manchester derby than we were going into the last one. I would be confident, particularly because City they're not firing on all cylinders, and the fact that it's at Old Trafford, I fancy us tomorrow, yeah, hopefully.
That attitude question, Simon, is a big one, I think, because even the battle with Cristiano Ronaldo, I mean, Ten Hag came out far better than Ronaldo did, certainly from that. And even Andy Mitten was on with us during the week, and he was talking about the fact that, under maybe Louis van Gaal, it was, if a player was 20-30 seconds late for a meeting, there was big fines, and it's not that strict. But at the same time, he's laying down the law in a very simple way. Just break the rules and you'll be dropped. And look, he took Rashford on in that game and he ends up scoring the winner. So
exactly, and it leads to everything else, Shane. It's all about attitude. And that also leads into the type of player that he wants at that club. He wants players who are going to work, who are physically able to do what he wants them to do, and will do a job for him and do a job for their teammates. He doesn't want show ponies. He doesn't want prima donnas. Clearly he doesn't. And I think that will inform the transfer windows over the next 18, 24 months as to what type of player that come in. Yes, the transfer budget will inform that as well, but I think Ten Hag is very clear on what type of player he wants to bring in. And you hear every manager saying that, and I have a pain in my arse listening to that. Well, we'll only get the right player. The player has to be right for us. What does that mean? What does that mean? We're not just going to buy someone willy-nilly. Well, obviously you're not. I mean, that's, we only want the player who will fit into what we need to work in here. I don't get that, but I think it informs those disciplinary attitudes. Everything leads into a culture at the club. Because there's no doubt about it, the culture over the previous 6 years, 5-6 years, was rotten from top to bottom. Now, we've still got the issue of our lovely absentee parasitic owners who are still sunbathing in Florida. But we're going to talk about that on Sunday as well, because Tom, my co-host, is fairly well connected in terms of what's happening with the sale, how likely is it, how soon is it going to happen, who's it going to be, who's going to buy us, because that, again, above anything else, will influence then where we go over the next 2 to 5 years.
What did you make of the Wout Weghorst signing? Sounds like he has to be registered by noon today, I think, to play tomorrow, which you'd imagine will be. It's an interesting one. Yeah.
It is an interesting one, and we were talking about that in the WhatsApp group, and a striker is a striker is a striker, and we need bodies, we need warm bodies. We've got a huge fixture congestion pile-up coming. We've got big games in the league. We've got the small matter of a quarter-final against Barca in the Europa League. We're still in 2 cup competitions, so he needs bodies. He can't be relying on Rashford and the most miserable football in the world, Martial, to keep that going. I mean, back in the heyday, when Fergie was at his pomp, he'd 4 strikers. He'd Colin, York, Sheringham, Solskjaer, and he rotated them throughout the season, and that's how you handle that fixture congestion. I think Weghorst will come in and do a job. 6'6". His stats are very impressive. a goal every 2 games in Germany. Didn't do it at Burnley, but he was surrounded by Drek at Burnley and they went down. His pressing stats. No, I don't go in for all that horse shite about stats and expected goal. Oh Jesus Christ, that gives me a pain behind my left eye when I see that stack come up. I don't know what it means. And my 14-year-old says to me, "He's United mad. What's that mean, Dad?" I said, "I haven't got a baldy, not a clue." But Weghorst's stats, his pressing stats are incredible, and again that goes back to. That's the type of player that Ten Hag wants. He wants someone who's going to come in and work his nuts off running up and down that pitch. And at 6'6", he's going to be a dangerous set pieces, and we all saw that at the World Cup against Argentina. So I think he'll come in and I think he'll score goals. Listen, he mightn't light the place up, but if he scores a half a dozen goals, important goals for us over the next 6 months, happy days. And he's costing you no money. It's a no-brainer for me.
Wave goodbye to him in the next window. What about? So obviously in terms of the game tomorrow, obviously looking at City over the last while, and we were chatting to an Arsenal reporter earlier on about the anticipation of watching City at the minute because it's not City of old, and like oddly, and I'm not suggesting for 1 second that his goals have dried up. He's just not scoring at the rate that he was before the World Cup. But even Haaland doesn't look like the player that he was. He sort of snatched at a chance against Chelsea there that 10 times out of 10 before the World Cup goes into the back of the net. Maybe I'm trying to offer you faint hope here, but have you? What's your sense of City?
Well, there's no better opportunity to get your season back on track if you're Haaland than banging in a goal or two at Old Trafford tomorrow, because he clearly that's the game he wants to score in, and he said that when he signed. He said that before he kicked the ball for City. He was asked what teams he looking forward most to playing, and that's United because of what happened obviously with his dad, etc., etc. There's history there, so that boy will be fired up. Now he's coming up against the Butcher of Amsterdam. He's going to come up against Martinez, who will be up to about just past his hip, I'd say, but I wouldn't fancy playing against Martinez. Martinez is fired up. He came on as a cameo the other night, played well again, even for a short period of time that he was on. Look, obviously every manager goes into a game against City and asks the question, how do we deal with Haaland? And then every manager will say, it's not just Haaland, there's 10 other players on the pitch. It's about systems. I think Ten Hag will have a system. I think we'll press. I think we'll be happy enough to sit in, and then he'll look for pace on the counter-attack with Rashford, with Bruno, with, whoever he has. If he has Anthony out there. Anthony's a bit worrying me now a bit at the minute, but that's another conversation. So it's not just about keeping Haaland quiet, it's keeping that attack quiet. So I think it's going to be a cracking game. I don't think it'll be 0-0, that's for sure. Cue the 0-0 draw.
Exactly, yeah. No chance. With your other hat on, have you did you enjoy the Banshees of Inisherin success and the reaction over the last few days? Or were you sitting there thinking, put me in, coach, put me in?
Lord, I put my hand up and say I haven't seen the movie yet, but obviously it's incredibly good for the Irish film industry when a movie like that does what it does on the international stage. It's done the Golden Globes. It'll probably roll through the BAFTAs now as well, and then into the Oscars. It will do the Irish film industry absolutely no harm at all. Now, it's very busy at the moment, thank God. There's quite a lot of stuff filming in and around Ardmore and other studio spaces around the country. Up north, I'm currently filming up in Belfast since last October. There's a lot happening here. And things like that, things like an international success, just reminds people, yes, we're here, and also we have cracking tax breaks. If you want to come and spend your dollars here and make your movie.
We're open for business.
Yeah.
Right, it's the Civic Theatre in Tala on Sunday. It's the Red Devils Roadshow, and you've put up details of that in your social accounts. We've retweeted that, so if people are looking for it, just head over and check that out. And also, I need to mention by contract, of course, your podcast with the irrepressible, I don't know what exactly moniker he should have there, but Aidan Power as well.
Did he tell you to say irrepressible?
He did, yeah. He just texted me there and said, listen, what's the best, what's the best you can come up with?
Adrian, he didn't actually, he's not up yet, let's be honest.
Good point. Simon, thanks a million. Pleasure as always.
A pleasure. Have a great day, guys.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Simon Delaney on the line there. It's certainly a derby that you're sort of thinking, like anything, it's not going to be repeated what happened in October.
No.
But anything could happen.
Set up very nicely.
Yeah.
I think with the United form, and because City have lost a couple. But look, City are a wounded animal. I think the Southampton result maybe could be a dangerous thing for United. City losing midweek will be the firework up the ass that maybe they needed. And Pep Guardiola sometimes needs a result like that to really kick the team back into gear. So yeah, I think I agree with Simon. It's not going to be a goalless draw. I'd be shocked if it was a goalless draw. So I expect goals. United are bang up for this game as well, and I just can't. As Simon says, Martinez up against Haaland is going to be belter, incredible. Yeah. So yeah, game to look forward to.
Shifty lad says, good job, Kilmacud aren't in the Talton Cup. Kathleen, this summer conversation earlier on. Sligo wouldn't have a hope. We'll leave that there. We are going to talk some tennis. We're going to talk about Breakpoint. Back after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Coigig Pod on OTB Sports.
I've had to basically say to them, if I can't get childcare, I'll not be coming to training. If a Sunday was to come and obviously if I was at work or whatever and I couldn't get childcare, then I can't even play that game.
It's mad to think of, really. It seems kind of archaic. It actually hasn't progressed at all.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
A great experience playing the National League, and the level of it these days is incredible.
Yeah, you're in a good position to probably look at how far it has developed then over the last decade.
And I've lots of friends who are still playing in the league there now, and like my friend Sinead Taylor captains Bohemians this year, and like even to see Shamrock Rovers have a team again is incredible. And Shells obviously have been class the last few years. And
come on, this is it. Oh, goal! What a goal! Off the head of the keeper.
My keeper, I don't know why he didn't use his hands in that instance, to be honest.
Oh, magic. I need a little bit of luck. I needed a little bit of luck, and finally I've got it.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Couldn't just see who was top of the leaderboard there, and you didn't see it was
humble brag here, is it?
That was a clip there, Hannah Turrell with Nathan. The OTB Games Room in partnership with Virgin Media bring your A game with 99.9% broadband reliability, and Hannah was the latest to take on the self-appointed OTB FIFA champ Nathan Murphy, and self-appointed and totally inaccurate, it must be said, but that is that. It's 25 to 10. A reminder, of course, that OTBAM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of today. 10:30, the football kickoff will be live, previewing the football for the weekend. 1 o'clock, OTB Gold, Emmanuel Petit, John Caulfield at 3. South Dublin's Mount Rushmore at 4 o'clock. And 6 is the Life and Times of Johnny Kilban. And then 7 o'clock will be Johnny Ward in the hot seat to take you into the weekend. He's also hosting a crappy quiz at some point this morning, so that'll be a roller coaster ride. Absolutely no doubt about it. You can follow OTB across all of our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the latest and best in sports content. We're back on Monday morning with our performance rankings. We're going to be also joined by Daniel Harris after the Manchester derby. Quinny will give him a bit more time to talk all things rugby, and Jenny Claffey on the tennis. Now we're going to hear from producers James Gay Rees and the showrunner Carrie Leah as well, whose latest show Breakpoint dropped on Netflix this morning.
OTB AM.
All right, brand new Netflix docu-series. It puts the spotlight on tennis this time. Has just dropped, is the official expression, on Netflix this morning. Breakpoint, it's called. Delighted to say a couple of people who are hugely responsible for putting it together. Producer James Gay Rees and showrunner Carrie Leah join us on the line now. Good morning to you both. Thanks a million for jumping on.
Morning. How you doing?
Nice to be here.
Good, thanks. You guys are responsible for this craze that's gripping the world at the minute around lifting the lid, pulling back the curtain from these sports. You were behind Drive to Survive as well.
Yes, yeah, we were. We've been making that show now for 5 years, which is amazing. And I suppose it's just had such a transformative effect on that sport that it's led to lots of other people coming knocking on the door, which is very nice. And so, yeah, when obviously tennis became a possibility, we jumped on it because we're all tennis fans and it's such a fascinating world, which was, we felt that there was a lot of untold story within it that we'd like to shine a light on. And so it proved.
There was no reluctance to, when you've created something so amazing that, like no pressure when you wander into another sport.
It's totally different, honestly. Each sport's obviously massively different. We're doing a few of these at the moment, and the experience is different every time. And tennis is literally could not be more diametrically opposed to to Formula One. If it tried, it's an individual sport in the truest sense of the word. There are no caddies even. There's nobody in your corner. There's no teams surrounding you in the sense of a Formula One team. And, it's just a completely different mental and physical activity with different bandwidth, different profiles. So, no, it felt like a totally different exercise. And it's been an absolute hoot, actually, to get under the skin of it all.
In terms of the starting out point, were you guys like F1 nuts, and then that's how you came to that? Because I know obviously you were behind Senna as well, James. Was that the way you came into this, or did you reverse into it in some other way?
Well, this or Formula One?
Generally into the genre, I suppose.
No, it was started off with Senna, obviously. And then obviously we made films like Maradona as well. And we've made a few things in the sports space, film about Steven Gerrard called Maker's Dream. And then it was just fortuitous. I was just at an event and bumped into the Red Bull team and then discussed doing a show around Formula One, and then, became Drive to Survive. And then, as I said, the phone started ringing. So no, it was just it was like most things in life. It wasn't designed. It was just a sort of a sequence of events.
Harry, what is the challenge of approaching players who have just suffered a humiliation on court? I'm thinking episode 3, Maria Sakkari, biggest final of her life, Indian Wells, loses to world number 1, Iga Swiatek, but doesn't just lose, is annihilated. She is fuming afterwards, but yet you capture the footage. We're there with her. How difficult was that to approach someone who at that moment is probably so volatile because they're so angry with themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's you put a lot of work, a lot of groundwork well before that time. So, we sit down, or James and Paul, sit down with people initially to talk to them about filming. But then, you have a long time where you talk about filming and about what story we want to tell of them, what's important for them to get across. And then it's really crucial that we say, listen, we're here, win or lose. We need to be here, whether you win or you lose. And we want to show that. And the chances are at a slam, 128 players come in and 127 lose. So the chances are, we are going to be filming loss at some point, unless it's the big one, right? And so we talk about that. They were very keen that we saw both sides. It was really important to them that they felt like it was time for people to be honest about what was really going on behind the scenes. But I think the most important thing is that the players all knew. We told them the second it gets to be too much and you want us to put the camera down, you look at us, give us a nod, and we put it down. We work together, and there's a layer of trust there that is really, really important. And actually, quite incredibly, I think that happened only one time, and it wasn't even.
Yeah, I was going to ask if that happened.
Yeah, it happened only one time, and I was there, and I remember it well. And it wasn't a story that we were particularly, was going to be big for us. It's not in the film, but yeah, no, because the trust was so good by that point. So I think everyone knew that we weren't there to embarrass them. We were there to tell their story.
Who was it?
It was Ons Jabeur in the first round. I'll tell you, we were actually doing a practice run because she had just won Madrid and made it to the finals of Rome. And we were doing a practice run with our team to do a slam. A lot of our team was their first slam. And we knew Ons really well. We're very close to Ons and love Ons. And we thought, okay, well, we'll just walk through what it's like to do a first round. And she lost. And it wasn't what anyone was expecting, and she wasn't, and they let us film at the, she was very upset, and then they just looked at us and gave us a nod, and it was like, it's fine. But we weren't there to call her out or anything, and we understood, so it's fine.
I tell you what, James. Sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
Go on, Colm, go ahead. No, go
I was going to say, James, it's not just entertaining, but you're very brave. Episode 2, Matteo Berrettini, Alia Tomljanovic, who at the time were a couple. They're no longer a couple, but they were going out at the time. They're both competing at the Australian Open. They have wildly different experiences at the Australian Open, but they're sharing this hotel room. And there's one scene where there's a discussion about their morning plans, let's say. And it's the next morning, it's like, well, I'm going for this interview. And Matteo's saying, well, I'm still in the tournament. I need my sleep. How were you able to get that access, stay there, and yet kind of be that fly in the wall and let them be themselves? In that particular instance, that was fascinating, that scene.
I mean, Karen can speak to this better because she's on the ground a lot more than I was. So,
I think with Matteo and Isla, they're actually incredibly natural people. Like what you see is what you get. Like they're not different when you put the camera down. They are like that. normally, and then they're like that when you put the camera down. So I think, the team got lucky because they're very open kind of people, and they, I think, to my mind, that story is really, I find that story really fascinating, because everyone always focuses on the top 10 players, but no one ever thinks about the thousands of people that are also trying to come up. And I think that's what was, to me, really interesting about Isla's story, is it's so as a story about someone who's trying to get in there, but it's really hard, and so hopefully we're able to show that.
Are we mispronouncing your name?
Carrie. No, don't worry. Like the county. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Good. You know your audience.
Don't worry.
And I'm going to apologise now, because I've done it a few times already, and I'll apologise for doing it again. But I'm going to reference Drive to Survive again. Did you find that having created that beast and the fact that it took over the world and everybody was watching it, that suddenly when you were talking to players, it was a slightly different dynamic in that people understood this is what's involved. So when it comes to losing and the fireworks kick off, we will be there. And so it wasn't like that there was no lack of understanding about what might be involved almost.
No, I don't think so. As you say, listen, a lot of athletes have watched that show because I think it had a certain sort of profile. So, people are pretty smart these days. They know that these things don't happen by themselves, and you've got to be in and amongst it, and you've got to basically, as Carrie said, film the good stuff alongside the bad stuff. And I think that I think listen, it's just there's no real magic to this process. People think there is, but there isn't. But you basically just have to earn their trust, and then basically hope that you kind of design the right kind of luck, because you've got to be in the right place at the right time. And you place a number of bets, and then it will come off, right? And so if you're smart, more come off than don't. And then you just kind of you just develop those relationships, and the trust increases all the time. And you'll see in the second half of the series, the relationships go deeper. The access gets better and better and better all the way through, which is always the same way on these shows. And then you start to find that emotional truth in the show, and they know when you're in that space, and when you're in that space, and that's when the kind of like the really good stuff happens. And it's very hard to get there though. And at the end of the day, all these people are professional athletes who actually have to focus on being an athlete, not really being on a TV star. And so it's you're walking a line all the time.
Have they all signed up? Did every player sign up to be involved, or is it, as always, you're trying to navigate around some personalities who just aren't into it?
No, there's hundreds of players, aren't there? So you can't do all of them. So we sat down with the Slams and the ATP and the WTA and just got the list out and said who's who, because we don't we're not tennis people. And we had a long list, and then it got shorter and shorter and shorter. Then you start to meet people, and some say, yeah, I'm all in, let's go for it. And then some say, I don't fancy it. It's just inevitable. But if it has, these shows have a way of finding their natural level. You end up engaging with the people that you're meant to engage with, if you see what I mean. You can't force people to do something they don't want to do.
That said, were there names not on the list that you wanted to be on it?
There's always a few, but not in a kind of debilitating way, no.
Yeah. One other one for me, because I know Colm is itching to get in, and this is very much his specialist topic, was the conversation around Nick Kyrgios being episode 1, a fairly brief one.
I can't remember, but yes, it was long and brief, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's tricky because we had 3 episodes, the first 3 episodes. Have you seen them all?
I've seen 1.5 episodes. Colm
okay.
I've seen much more inroads than I have, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, because episode 3 is one of our favorite episodes, where Taylor Fritz, who no one expected to do well, goes and the end. Well, I don't want to give it away, but he does something fantastic in that episode, and it's very exciting. And so, that's a great episode. Matteo Berrettini is a fantastic, does incredibly well at the Australian Open. So to be honest with you, internally, there was a lot of talk about, we have 3 fantastic potential episodes that could be the first one, and everyone had their favorite, but in the end, it was actually Netflix decision. So.
Really? Okay. Yeah, because Kyrgios has episode 1 to himself, and that's not the case for the following 4. So
yeah,
Netflix felt that strongly about Kyrgios. I mean, for me, Kyrgios works out as about the 7th most famous tennis player in the world. So you have Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, Murray, Serena, and Osaka. And then comes Kyrgios. So was it a case, maybe for you, James, that Kyrgios was the most famous left over, so we had to go first? Or are we just talking about a generational personality?
No.
So captivating?
it's purely the strength of the narrative. I mean, obviously he is, he's a noisy character, so it's a good way to open the show because he is talked about, as you say, but also, he's got a very interesting story, and we picked that up in the second part of the show as well. We go deeper into him and explain, try to get under his skin a little bit and work out what's really going on there. So, no, he's just listening. He gave us great access, and he's a great hook. But they've all got good stories, and like Carrie said, honestly, at certain points in time, we were dedicated to another episode. Then it was a different point. There was a different starting point, so it wasn't always designed to be around him.
What really strikes me is it's such a lonely sport. It's such a lonely sport, right. and I suppose I do glamorize it. I'm such a fan of tennis, and so many people are, that it seems so fantastic. Imagine winning at Wimbledon or the other 3 Grand Slams and getting all this money and fame and fortune. But geez, for the vast majority of players, it's such a grind. And there's a scene with Tomljanovic and just her mental health. It's so apparent. People know about it with Kyrgios, but with Tomljanovic especially. Who is this documentary for?
I think it was really important to us that we made a documentary that was, going to speak to a vast majority of people, and you didn't have to know anything about tennis to enjoy it. I think hopefully a lot of the stories, especially the one that you're talking about when Tomljanovic, Isla loses, it's about, how it feels. I think everyone knows what it feels like to go out there and try really hard and fail badly, and how difficult and disappointing it is, and embarrassing, and on all of those things. And so we wanted to tell stories that were true to people, no matter what, no matter if you knew about tennis or not. And hopefully the tennis fans will love it. I'm sure they won't like some of the explainers, because we explain, basic things, and we have to do that because the truth is the majority of people, we wanted to make something that everyone could enjoy, whether you are a tennis fan or not.
I have a theory though as well, that because most people at some point in their life have tried to play tennis and picked up a tennis racket, and like me, failed miserably to be any good at it. But you can sort of relate to somebody putting a forehand into the net. Do you know what I mean? No matter how good you are. So I think actually, very few people are ever going to get into a Formula One car, which is why that show appeals to people in a different way. But I think this show could appeal to a lot of people because you'll be like, I know that feeling. I know what it's like to hit a double fault. And even though nobody gives a shit when I hit a double fault, and it can be literally a life-changing event when Nick Kyrgios does it in a Wimbledon final, you know how he feels because we've all done it. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's something in that should really have some traction with people. I mean, that's obviously, I'm hoping that that's the case, but I could believe that could be the case.
Well, one of the more relatable quotes is, I think, from Sakari again, when she's on the bike after Indian Wells final, and she says, in tennis, you have to get used to losing, because you're going to lose more than you win unless you're the big 3. And I was thinking, wow, depending on the kind of day you've just had yourself, it's well, that is extremely relatable. Now, look, between us, just between us, who was your favourite player to work with?
We loved them all, didn't we, James?
Come on.
I have a soft spot for Isla. I think Isla's just a brilliant character, and she's got a brilliant story in the second half of the show as well. So she has an amazing journey and curve. So she was great, and Jimson, she gave us a lot of her time as well. So
I have a soft spot for Isla's dad. I'm just going to be straight up about that. You'll see what I mean.
James, you're involved in the new golf documentary.
Yeah.
I was only just thinking about it as we were chatting. I mean, the good fortune / good planning, in one of the most recent Drive to Survive series with Abu Dhabi, you have Djokovic and the whole COVID stuff in the tennis, and lo and behold, Live Golf lands onto your plate. You must. I mean, I know there was a lot of hand wringing amongst the tour and stuff, but I mean, that was a gift from the gods.
I know, we were panicking though, because we were like, hang on, so basically every player we're featuring is going to live, and this is a show about the PGA. So does that mean that we can't have any of those players in the series? So there were some quite anxious times. But yeah, no, what can I tell you? We're lucky producers. We do seem to be sometimes in the right place at the right time. And listen, we all need a bit of luck, don't we? So,
Yeah, but you have to be there to get the luck.
Yeah.
Are there more, where are the better characters, golf, Formula One or tennis?
Ooh.
Tennis.
They're so different. They're so different, honestly. When you see the golf show as well, that's like a totally different beast altogether as well. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like part of the same. So they're they're all my children. Love them all. I have a favourite, but I'm not going to say who it is.
We all have favourite kids. That's the way.
I knew you had a favourite, James, by the way you're answering that question. You have to come on again and tell us. After all three,
next time.
That's a promise, is it? After all 3 air, you have to come on and tell us. There's an answer.
We've got another 2 which are about to hit the script or hit their in production. So after that, the other 2 have dropped as well. Then we can have a conversation.
Chat. One last one for both of you. What's your favourite fly on the wall documentary of all time, be it sport, non-sport?
Fucking hell, that's a big question. Sorry. Favourite fly of all time.
I'm going to be very boring, and you might not have seen it, but there was a series called Exodus, which was on BBC Two, which is about the Syrian refugees trying to come to the UK.
Wow,
that was pretty amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
Go on.
Me?
Another moment of inspiration there, Carrie, that you were...
you were thinking of another.
No. That one. Yeah.
James.
Senna. No, I'm joking.
Senna is
a good show.
It's pretty good.
Honestly, my brain's gone, so I can't give you anything inspiring.
When we have you on the next time, like Colm said, we'll definitely come back to that one. As I said, it's dropped on Netflix as of this morning. It's a great show. It's called Breakpoint, and delighted to say that a couple of people who are really responsible for putting it together: showrunner Carrie Leah and producer James Gay-Rees. Thanks, William, for jumping on.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor.